All right, I think we're ready. Good morning. For those who don't know, I'm Bryce Wilson, the Finance Officer for the Department of Education. I got a great team with me here today. We got Beth Wooster and Dottie Huseman from our ESEA Federal Programs team. Kelsey Larson is new on the job as one of our kind of budget AFR program specialists. Michelle Cartwright, our school finance director. Stephanie DeGroat, also kind of the budget AFR guru. She loves her pupil transportation hat as well. You might start to get to know her on that piece. And then Naomi Coles.
All things portal services.
Yeah. So all the things you need access to inside the portal, that'll be Naomi. So we're gonna go through a lot of information for you today. Kind of the format is this morning. For those that haven't been through this before, it'll be mostly kind of classroom. We're gonna talk at you. We're gonna give you a lot of information. If you're new, it's gonna feel a little bit like a fire hydrant of information. When we get done around noon, 12:15-ish, we'll break quickly, grab lunch, give you a chance to go out and grab lunch. And then if you want to, you're not required to, but if you want to, stick around. And this afternoon will be time to just work one-on-one with you. So if you're new and you're like, okay, I don't even know where to start on the budget, or maybe you're a returning soup and you've got a ways down it and you just want us to take a look at it, see if you're on the right track, work on your budget. If you have questions about state aid, TIOSA that you don't want to ask in front of everybody, we'll answer those questions. We have the federal programs team here that will help you with your title application. Get that one more thing checked off your box before the school year starts, or at least as far as you can get, I should say, at this point with what's going on in the federal government. And they'll touch on that. They've been out they've had a lot of contact with our contacts at Washington, DC, trying to get as much information as we can. So that'll be good information for you later on this morning. And then really just any other items, if you want to talk vans, whether we want to or not, we'll talk vans with you. Those types of things. So we will hit on that just quickly too, because that's a thing. And we'll be hitting on it next week at administrator days too. So just trying to make sure you know what's going on with all that information. I will tell you too, as we go along, I'll kick things off here first this morning, but as we go, I think everybody's going to be like this. I know I am. If you have questions as we're going through this, I've found I think at least it's so much more helpful if you ask those questions and we turn this more into a discussion than me talking at you. So don't hesitate. You're not going to mess me up any more than I normally mess myself up. So don't worry about that. But that's kind of how this morning will go. Before we get rolling here too far, I want to do quick introductions for you guys. So help us sometimes the new people to put faces. You know, a lot of times we see the names or we get the phone call or the email. Don't always have a face of the name. So that's helpful to us too. If you would, we'll go around, start here at the front, but if you would just say name, school districts, position and year, those are helpful pieces of information to us. So.
Aaron Bradenkamp, Assistant Superintendent of Business for Alston Public Schools, year 3.
Yeah, amazing. Winside Public Schools Superintendent, first year there.
Lisa Phillips, District 1 Public Schools, Business Manager. I've been there for a long time.
District 1, where's that at? That's a weird name.
How might have been it?
No one knows. Mike Hart, District 1, same unknown location. And I've been there this is my 6th year now.
Rick Meyer, Plymouth Lakeview. It's my first year.
Ryan Hines, I'm the new business manager at Crete. I've been at Crete for 16 years, but the business manager for 4 months.
Nathan Lytle, Superintendent of Pleasanton. I'll be starting year 5.
Mark Broggy, Superintendent Crofton. This is my first year.
Rod Engel, Shelton Public Schools. This will be my first year superintendent.
Andrea Stubbs, Centura, bookkeeper. First year as bookkeeper, but 6 years at the school.
Kayla Henniger, Superintendent, Centura Public Schools. I've been on it like 17 days.
Kate Chrisman, Superintendent at Scribner Snyder Community Schools, also day 17.
Lake County first year.
Brandy Bartles, Superintendent, Twin River Public Schools, first year.
I'm her sidekick. I'm Lori Swanchuk. I'm the business manager at Twin River and I've been there 22 years.
Ben Wright, Sumner Eddyville Miller, first year superintendent.
Todd Evans, superintendent at Pawnee City School, first year.
Justin Peterson, Woodward Claytonia Public Schools, second year. Riley Arms, Sterling Public Schools, first year.
Todd Hollerson, Lewiston, first year. DJ Weddle, Westwood Public Schools, fourth year superintendent, I think 22nd year in the district.
Josh Lynch, Lawrence Nelson Public Schools, superintendent, first year.
Brett Schwartz, UTM Public Schools, first year.
All right, well, I'm also from that district that nobody knows where it's at, District OR one. So I know all about that one. That's why I'm giving a hard time. Before I get into this any further, for those that have been around, you know how I start this out, but you gotta have the analogy so you know what you're walking into. That for the newbies, this is gonna be a little bit like the guy who goes to his doctor for his annual checkup. And he gets done and the doctor says, I think you better have a seat. The guy says, okay, so he sits down. Doctor says, you know, I'm not exactly sure how to tell you this, but you're in pretty bad shape. I says, well, that's not good. And doctor says, in fact, he says, I think you only got about 24 hours to live. Guy's like, whoa, that's bad. Just kind of sit there in silence for a little bit. And pretty soon the superintendent says, you know, I guess my recommendation to you is get the most out of these last 24 hours, you know, live it up, get everything you can out of these last 24 hours. And the guy said, I suppose that makes sense. So they sit there for a little bit longer, just kind of silent, awkward silence. And pretty soon the doctor says, you know, you have any ideas what you might want to do on these last 24 hours? The guy thinks for a little bit and he says, you know, I think I do. He says, I think I want to go to that new soup orientation by NDE. The doctor's kind of taken back. He's like, you know, why would you want to do that on your last 24 hours? And the guy says, well, he says, when I heard you go to that, it feels like the longest day ever. So you know what you're in for now. Like I s- what's the, for those that are coming back, I'm assuming you like that joke, so that's why you just keep coming back, right? It works because the new superintendents keep rolling in every year. All right, a couple things to start off with. Again, really I love that you come back. If you are a returning superintendent, I love that you come back or business manager, because I think year one, from the feedback we've gotten, a lot of times it's overwhelming and it's hard to grasp everything. And I think years 2, 3, 4, whatever it is, 5, you start to grab more and more of what we're saying and it makes sense and you learn a little bit more every year. That's what we've heard from some of the ones that love to come every year, and that's awesome too. We have no issues with that. One of the things, if you're a brand newbie, that you're gonna learn real quick, and I would really stress is, we're gonna talk a whole lot about budgets today, because it's the first thing that hits you right away. You gotta get a budget put together and ready to go for your board's approval and everything else right away. And that's I think for a lot of superintendents, that especially if you're not a finance background, it's a little bit overwhelming. And quite honestly, even as a recovering auditor myself, like, there's so much gray area we live in when you're doing a school district budget. It's uncomfortable if you're not comfortable with, or if you don't know what's okay to live, what's okay to be gray and what's not. So we're gonna walk you through a lot of that stuff, and really hit the budget stuff hard. I'm gonna start off with funds, the different school district funds. But what I wanna hit first before we get down on funds is, it's really important that you understand you really need 2 budgets for your district. So you're gonna have a budget that we help you with, that's the required and statute budget, that gives you 2 things. One, it gives you the ability to tax. It creates that ability to have your tax asking. And 2, it gives you the ability to spend. The thing you need to understand about that budget is most of the numbers in that, as far as like your spending numbers, aren't real numbers. They won't be real numbers because you have to inflate it. Otherwise, you're gonna be amending your budget all the time, and and you gotta make those numbers work out. You can't use it as your actual budget. You also need to have a second budget that is your real budget, that is your estimated, hey, this is the revenue we are anticipating coming into our district this year. We know we're getting this for state aid. We know our sped reimbursement is gonna probably be this. Here's what we need to have for property taxes to make all this work, because our expenditures are here. Here's where our salaries are gonna be. You know, obviously you're estimating, but you need to have a pretty good idea. That's the one you're gonna take back to your board on a monthly basis. And you're gonna be tracking and seeing, how are we doing month to month to month on staying on that actual spending? The state budget is not that. It's just the tool to get you your tax asking and the authority to spend. So we'll talk about what that is, and we are gonna be glad to sit through and we'll talk a lot more about what it looks like, and then all the support we have for you, especially if you're brand new and you need need help, so.
Bryce, would you move over closer to the podium so the people online can see you? They're seeing the top of somebody's head.
They're
I'm
gonna,
not
oh, they're
sure
gonna,
who.
now they're gonna get a glare.
Yeah. Thank you. That'll be perfect on this
You're
side.
good. You're good. If you wanna come up here so they look at you instead of me, that'd be great.
I don't know nothing.
All right, so that's kind of just a quick overview, I think highlights. We're gonna talk about funds first. Quick quiz, how many funds does a school district have available to them? Anybody know? How many funds are available to a school district? 7, okay, good guess. 12, getting closer. But if it was Price is Right, you went over. Any other guesses? Close. 11. Okay, 11 funds. Out of the 11 funds, how many of those funds are taxing funds? 4 taxing funds. We'll go into which ones those are in just a second. Out of the 11 funds, how many, we're gonna explain what this is if you don't know, but how many of those funds are what we would call sub funds? Anybody know? Anybody know what sub funds, what that means even? Okay, well, we'll get there. 2 is the answer. Okay, after we go through this information, so like I said, we're gonna throw a lot at you this morning, and I'm gonna talk a lot about what these different funds are. Here's what I want you to know is you forget what I say, you know, hey, we got this transaction came in. I'm not sure. Is this a building fund? Is this depreciation fund or what is it? Rule 2 and the user's manual, the 2 places that we'll go through and describe what statute says about allowable uses for those funds. So that's where we're gonna go back and look at that. When you ask us a question, it's the resource for you. And really, the user, when you're a new soup business manager, 3 documents that I recommend you have at your hands available. And one's gonna be that user's manual. That's gonna be, if you wanna know how to code different transactions, what fund to use, anything new that kind of goes with our AFR type of information, that's gonna be in the user's manual. The second one is the budget text. That obviously right away is a huge important one to you. That's gonna give you all the information you need to know. What do I need to file? What needs to be sent in to who? If I have to amend my budget, what does that look like? All in the budget text. We're also glad to help with those questions, but those are the resources you can go to that should be right at your fingertips. And then the last one is the TIOSA document that describes how does the state aid funding formula TIOSA work? All the different components, the numbers you need in there, everything, we provide everything so you can, if you just get bored, have nothing better to do, want to recalculate your own state aid, we'll provide all the information so you can do that. So that's kind of where you can review that. So when we talk about funds, we said there was 4 taxing funds, right? The general, the special building, the qualified capital purpose undertaking fund. So we use a lot of acronyms. You'll hear us say QCPUF. That's the qualified capital purpose undertaking fund. And then the bond fund. Those are the 4 taxing funds. We're gonna go through real quick those 4 to start with. The general fund, this is obviously the main place where school district spending occurs. Is for the majority of your, I'm gonna say normal work. It's where you educate kids. You're paying the teachers, you're paying the paras that are doing that work. You are taking care of the operations of the district. Main source of revenue for most districts to support the general fund? Property taxes, yep. Some districts, we do have a couple districts that get more state aid, and that is their biggest source of funding, but that's pretty, out of the 245 school districts, it's only a handful. But there are a lot of things that go into your general fund, and a lot of things that aren't just, when we say state aid, everybody thinks TIOSA. There's other kinds of state aid. You got special education reimbursement, you got apportionment, there's state grants like CTE grants, all those types of things also go into your general fund. When you see on the slide there, it says levies restricted, it's part of the $5. When we talk about a levy lid, there's 3 different ways that we control school district spending in the state of Nebraska. One, I gave you one there, it's the levy lid. What are the other 2? Anybody know? What's that?
Budget authority.
Budget authority, so spending, yep.
Property tax.
Property tax authority, that's the new one. It just came in this will be year 3 of property tax authority, I think. That one is the biggest restriction for a lot of districts out there right now, but just depending on the school district and what your situation is, We do have a couple that are getting close to the $1.05 again. Budget authority is definitely an issue for a handful of districts, and then property tax authority. So the general fund is part of the $1.05, and what you'll find is really, for the most part, the simplest way to look at it is anything that's not elected as a bond for your district, or it's not paying back bond principal and interest, is probably part of the $1.05. Levy lid. Bond fund. This one, when I first got on, I think this one confused a lot of people, and it definitely did me too, is when your district goes out and you pass a $30 million bond, you're gonna do an addition or build a building, something like that. When you pass that bond and you get those bond proceeds in, where does that money go? What's that?
Building.
In the building fund, correct. Yep. So when you pass that bond and you're doing that bond project, none of the work of the actual project is gonna show up in the bond fund. The bond fund is only to tax to pay back the bond. So the only thing you're gonna see in there is tax proceeds when you start taxing to pay back that bond, and then when you make a bond payment, all the project itself will go through the building fund, which we'll talk about in a second. So just make sure that, because we'll have that situation come up and be like, oh, we ran that all through a bond fund. Well, you can't. You're gonna have to journal entry that out, move it over to your special building fund.
It'd be the same as a lease purchase.
What's that?
Would that be the same as a lease purchase?
Lease purchase would not go through the bond fund. That's only gonna be for elected bonds.
But it'd go in the special building.
That's a great question. I was gonna hit on that. You're ahead of schedule for me.
That's the one question I had came today. I'm going home.
Okay. Right. So the question was up here, I'll repeat it, is lease purchases. Would that go, really is the question. Let me get to the building fund, then I'll hit on that. That's a good question.
I could help.
Yeah. Qualified capital purpose undertaking fund, again, QC Puff is for those emergency type situations. So when your district has a fire marshal come in and says, you got an older building, says, you gotta get fire sprinklers in here, you got 1.5 years to do that, or you're closing the building down, right? You gotta get that taken care of right away. You don't have time to save up for a project. If you don't have funding saved up in your building fund, you gotta do something, right? This will allow you, the QC Puff would allow you to do that. The big one, it's really those like mold abatement, life safety code, accessibility, handicap accessibility barriers. Statute says specifically what it can be used for. The new one that just got added 2 years ago is safety and security infrastructure. That's been very helpful for school districts to address a lot of those concerns. Now, keep in mind, one of the questions we got, can we have a school resource officer funded out of that? No, that's not infrastructure. So it would be things like door locks, bulletproof glass, new entryways so that you have a secure entryway and can see who's coming into the building. All that type of stuff would be allowable. Yeah. Camera systems, we've said that makes sense to me. It's attached to the building. So, yep, that would work. 3 cents is the max that can be taxed in that fund. You see the 5.2 cents for really old projects. It's getting to be quite a bit. We won't have that 5.2 applying much longer, but there were some old bonds that went 20, 30 years. And so that 5.2 cents applies to those old things going on. If you have an old project going on that's under the 5.2 cents, you can't add any new projects on until you get below 3 cents. Okay, so even if you're like, hey, we're at 4.2, we just want to use one of the new 3 cents, it doesn't work that way. You got to get under 3 cents before you can start taxing for an additional project, which does occur as valuations increase. Your levy needed for that old project might go down. One of the things about this fund is it may or may not be part of the $1.05 levy lid. Any ideas what's going to change and determine which way that goes? There's 2 ways you can use this fund. What's that?
Is it the bond, if you bond it?
You got it. So if you use this fund and you go out to a financing company and you say, hey, I want to do this project, I need the cash now to put the sprinklers in our building. What can I borrow at what you can borrow it for 10 years at 3 cents. So whatever that maximum amount, you borrow that and you pay back that bond, you're paying back bond principal and interest. It's not part of the $1.05. The other way you can use this fund is you just start taxing 3 cents in it to save up for projects. Like, hey, we have bleachers out on our football field that aren't handicap accessible that we're going to have to get corrected. We're going to tax 3 cents in there to address that. That's not paying back bond principal and interest. So you're just saving up for that project. It is part of the $1.05 levy lid. A lot of districts, that's not an issue for them right now. With the changes a couple of years ago, pushed a lot of districts away from that $1.05, so that's not as big a deal, but it may become a bigger issue again.
So if you bond, is there a maximum number of years you can, just
10.
10 the maximum?
10 years. What you can raise at 3 cents, 10 years. So, and the statute does say, you know, if your valuation would happen, rare, but if your valuation would happen to go down and you're committed to a dollar amount, you locked in at 3 cents for 10 years, you are allowed to go over the 3 cents if your valuation went down. Rarely does that happen because valuations typically go up.
So,
But you know, you never know what the School Finance Review Commission might do with valuations, and so, or the legislature, I should say, what School Finance Review Commission may recommend. Yeah,
yeah, so if, let's say you're getting it to save it, it goes toward $1.05, does it also count toward, you know, the 2% that you can go up, you know, LB 2.3 basically?
so the question is, and I was just getting to that too, you're right, you're ahead of me. Property tax authority. So we'll talk about property tax authority in more depth later. Property tax authority applies only to the special building fund and the general fund. So one of the things about this account is, or fund is, when property tax authority was coming into existence, they were trying to work through a lot of issues, like anytime we change anything school finance. And I said, in those conversations, I said, they wanted to include everything but the bond fund. And I said, QC Puff, I talked them out of it basically. I said, no, hardly any school district uses the QC Puff. It's only 3 cents. And there's gonna be so many exceptions that it's gonna be a nightmare to try and track. Well, because I successfully talked them out of having the QC Puff in the property tax authority, what happened the very next year to the use of the QC Puff fund? Went through the roof. Everybody started taxing in the QC Puff fund for safety and security or whatever was a needed project, but no longer was, they had authority issues. And so the building fund, which typically would have had a lot of that work done in it, is now being moved over to the QC Puff. So it is outside of that for now. All right, special building fund, last of the 4 taxing funds. It's gonna be for new building projects, purchase sites. So if you know you're gonna put in a new football field or a building and you buy the land, that's all gonna be building fund. If you're doing major renovations, that should be building fund. You can pay for, if you did a big addition on a school building, the furnishings for that new facility. So I would tell you the things like desks, smart boards, those types of things that are connected, especially if they're connected to the building, absolutely. I would say you're probably pushing it. We've gotten this question a few times lately. You're probably pushing it if you're asking to use building funds to pay for textbooks and pencils and all the classroom material type of stuff to fill that building. But the things that like desks, the other stuff that you need in there is to use it as functioning building, I would say that definitely counts towards the furnishings for a new facility. What revenue sources? So obviously there's property taxes. We said this is one of the taxing funds. What other revenue sources do you would be allowable to go into the building fund? Common ones.
Interest.
Interest, sure. So if you passed a bond and you made your what's the word? I'm blanking on the word. Your deposit for those bond funds into your special building fund, you'd earn interest off of that. So interest, sure. What else?
For those districts that have windmills, the nameplate capacity tax portion.
A portion of your nameplate capacity tax, that would go in there, yep. So it's tax again. What about you get, I always use my district because we had a really cool situation. You get a $5.2 million donation for a new athletic facility. Where should that go? Where should that donation be put in? Building fund, right? It's a building fund type activity. So you get donations. If that donation was for computers, it would go in your general fund. That's general fund activity. If it's for new football uniforms, activities fund. We haven't got there yet, but you would put it in the fund that makes the most sense for the activity that's being done. So that $5.2 million donation was put directly into the special building fund, and then the projects run out of the special building fund. Okay. What about a grant? You get a grant from Walmart for new playground. Buffett Foundation, something like that, new playground, building fund, okay? Let's say your school building, you had a terrible hailstorm come through. You have to put a new roof on. Insurance proceeds, building fund, because you're gonna do that out of the building fund, right? Make sense? It's part of the $5 levy lid. It's part of the property tax authority, maximum amount. 14 cents is the max you can go into the building fund. This is one legislature's looked at a lot of lowering that 14 cents. It does say 17, you see the 17.5 cents up there. If you go out for an election of your public, you can raise that up to 17.5. I've never seen that done because most time if you're gonna go to election, they just go for the bond. It's simpler. But it is something you can do. Question on any of those taxing funds? All right, so one of the things about, you gotta keep in mind is the purpose you tax funding for, you have to use those funds for it. So what does that mean? It means you can't transfer money between taxing funds. We'll talk about transfers in a second from general fund to some of the other funds, but you can't transfer money from your general fund to your special building fund. Now, the slide does say there's, you can loan money between taxing funds. So not other funds. You can loan money between, statute allows you to loan money between taxing funds for up to 2 years. Okay, so general funds, you get into one of those lean months, you're not getting much property taxes rolling in, and you're gonna be short on payroll. You have funding sitting in your special building fund. Instead of going out and getting a short-term loan, you're paying bank financing charges on. You can loan money from your special building fund into your general fund and then just pay it back within 2 years. Vice versa, you're just a little bit short of finishing up your building project. Hey, we can tax and get that remaining amount in the next year or in the next 2 years. And we have a little bit of balance sitting in our general fund. We're gonna loan money there. So you can do that. The one exception to the transfer rule with these taxing funds is statute does allow you to make a transfer from your general fund to your bond fund. That's the only way if you're short and can't make a bond payment. Now, that doesn't mean, I would tell you, back in the day when there used to be a minimum levy adjustment, and so you got dinged in your general fund if you weren't at a certain amount, school districts sometimes ask, well, could we kind of accidentally be short in our bond fund? So we tax in our general fund and then transfer. That is not the intent of it. I would not recommend that. If you want to go that route, work with your legal counsel and see what they say. But I would say it's most of the time used if you're starting a new bond and you haven't had enough bond proceeds come in yet to make that first payment. That's occasionally where I've seen it used. Sometimes if payments are just coming in really slow or you didn't ask enough on a mistake, and you needed to cover, you could use your general fund to make that transfer or to help subsidize that bond fund. All right, again, I'm gonna keep rolling, but ask if you have questions. All right, depreciation fund. This is one I think that actually causes a little bit more confusion than some of the others. This one and the next one, employee benefit fund, are the two sub funds. We say sub funds means the reason they're different is nothing can get into those two funds without rolling through the general fund first. They're kind of sub funds of the general fund. So the depreciation fund, what you need to think about what its purpose is, if you're one of the school districts that's bumping up against your budget authority, Liz, you don't have a lot of extra spending authority in your general fund, but you have some big projects coming up that you need to do, repairs, replacements, purchase big school. So the example I like to use, you have to purchase a $300,000 school bus coming up, okay? And your district is really close bumping up to that budget authority limit. At the end of year one, you have 100,000 left in your general fund spending authority. You could expense, you can't transfer, but you expense out under the purchase bus function and object code. You expense it out in the general fund, so it shows up as a bus purchase, 100,000, and you make the transfer then into the depreciation fund. Year two, same thing, 100,000, you expense it out, show it as an expense in the general fund of that, transfer it to the depreciation fund. Year three, you have that last 100,000, you transfer to the depreciation fund, you can make the purchase then out of the depreciation fund. The 300,000 doesn't count against your budget authority out of the depreciation fund. Only the 100,000 each year counted against your spending authority in the general fund. So it's a way to save up for those big purchases. A roof replacement would be another common example. Track replacements, those types of things. It's for replacement repairs. Used textbooks used to be a common use of that when you had paper textbooks. Those types of things, those common capital outlay type purchases. So keep in mind though, the key to this one really is you have to show the expense in the general fund before you make the transfer. And the reason for that is it's a transparency issue really, so that the public sees how you're intending to use those funds in the depreciation fund and is showing up as a corresponding expense in the general fund and for per pupil costs and other purposes. If you transfer out, so one of the things we found a few years ago is a lot of schools hadn't tracked how they expensed out and they just had money sitting in their depreciation fund. They had no idea how it was expensed out. You really need to be tracking that. So if you've been tracking it and saying, we're doing this bus, and you're transferring it out of the general fund under a bus purchase, and then all of a sudden 2 years later, you hadn't got to buying that bus yet, but your roof went bad and you needed to replace it, with board action, you can change the use of those funds. So here the key to this is there's a public record at that point. They can go to the board minutes and see, hey, you know what? We transferred that under bus purchase, ended up doing roof. The reason I like to use an example from my district because I know it. If my district had some people in the past who were anti-athletic expenditures, and say we had a situation where we had been transferring money out of our general fund under textbook purchases. They had planned to use that money to purchase textbooks, the school spending expenditure. And then all of a sudden the track surface went bad or the football surface went bad and they had to use that money in the depreciation fund for that purpose. It would be kind of misleading to the public if all the expenditures showed up in the general fund as textbook purchases. And then when it was actually spent in the depreciation fund, it paid for a football field, right? So the board action then shows the public, hey, they changed what they expensed it out there for. That makes sense? Okay, the only fund, I'll go back and ask this question for us. How much cash are you limited to holding at the bank for your general fund? Anybody know? What's the limit on cash you can have in the bank in your general fund?
5% of the budget.
35, 45?
None.
Somebody's gonna say 25.
None.
None, there is no limit, right? So that's a really, really confusing point. So I know exactly where you're going. And that was my whole point asking that question. So when we budget, every school district is subject to a limit on their allowable reserves percentage. And it'll be depending on the size of your district, 25, 35, or 45%, right? That's what we're talking about there. The depreciation fund is part of that allowable reserve limit, but it's only a budgeting tool. Okay, so it only applies to the necessary cash reserves in your general fund, which isn't your bank balance. So technically in the general fund, there is no limit to how much money you can have in the bank. Okay, our recommendation at the department is we usually say 3 to 4 months operating is a good reserve to have in your bank account to get you through lean months, right? But there's no limit on statute on how much you have in a bank. I know there's a district sitting in here that had at one point, probably 8, 9, 10 years ago, time gets away from me, 27 months operating, sitting in their general fund. Thought that was kind of high. But they were working on spending it down about, I think, a month a year. So, but their board and public didn't seem to have a problem with it. So no issue. The other thing, yeah.
You recommend that 3 to 4 months is in your shortest year or your shortest month?
If your board's okay with it, that would make me as a business manager feel the most comfortable is to have 3 to 4 months in your lean months. And just explaining that, yep, we'll get down. That's probably that's probably on the pretty conservative side, you know. Some districts are maybe more 3 to 4 months on their good months, so it somewhere in there. The depreciation fund though is limited because the total balance in the depreciation fund is part of that allowable reserve, that 30, 25, 35, 45. The LC2 will tell you if you're getting up over that amount. So the total depreciation fund is limited in that amount. Employee benefit fund, another sub fund of the general fund, same type of thing. If you have upcoming expenses and you bumping up against your budget authority, you might want to transfer some funds into there for early retirements, health insurance benefits. You know that just things are going to get tight for you in future years. It's a good way for you to kind of put some savings and budget authority away in the bank for later time. Key, I guess, to this one is same thing. There's really no limit on this one in total cash because it doesn't look at the total balance of this one, just the depreciation fund. Question on any of those? Contingency fund. So not a lot of districts use this, but if you have uninsured losses by the district, legal fees against public losses, those couple of situations, you are allowed to transfer funds from your general fund over to the contingency fund, knowing that that lawsuit likely will get settled in a future year and you're trying to save up for it. Every once in a while it's used, but not too often. Activities fund, this is going to be a common fund that everybody's going to have, all the extracurricular activities. So obviously you think of sports, you can track that and you can keep them separate at your district, track them however you want. It all rolls up into one total for us at the state level when you submit your annual financial report, but you might have one for football, volleyball, but this is also all the other extracurriculars going on at your school too. So it's FFA, it's one acts, it's band, all those types of things. You are responsible as a school district. It is funding under your school district. You have to monitor and keep track of these funds. And if you are short in your activities fund, you can make a transfer from your general fund to the activities fund to cover that shortfall. That's allowed. The other thing, what are going to be common revenue sources for the activities fund? You're going to see gate fees, fundraisers. You know, FFA had a big fundraiser. Their funding is going to go into that account. Donations, grants, all of those types of things can go directly into the activities fund. School nutrition fund, kind of self-explanatory as far as what it's about. Those breakfast, lunch, after school snacks, food type of stuff. You're going to have revenue sources there from the federal government, at least at the moment, the state government, and your general fund can help subsidize your nutrition fund if you're short as well. One of the things you might run into is if your balance gets too high, the nutrition team may contact you. There's federal regulations on how much balance you can carry in your nutrition fund. That happens from time to time. Definitely recommend getting in touch with Katie Parch or the nutrition team if you run into that situation. But essentially, they're going to tell you probably purchase kitchen equipment out of there. You can do that. Lower what you're charging students so that you can spend down that balance. Those are kind of the main things that we'll see with that fund. All right, cooperative fund. This one sometimes gets misused. Well, the key to using the cooperative fund is knowing that you're only going to use the cooperative fund if you're doing some kind of activity with another political subdivision. It has to be another political subdivision, and you have to be the fiscal agent. If you're not the fiscal agent, you should not be using the cooperative fund. The purpose of it is to make sure that we don't overstate revenues and expenditures in your school district if you're the fiscal agent. So an example that I would give, if you share a teacher, so say you're District A, and you share a teacher with District B, you're responsible for 60,000 of their total $100,000 salary and benefits for this teacher, okay? To use the cooperative fund as the fiscal agent, you would, over the course of the year, expense out your 60,000 of salaries and benefits in your general fund, make the transfer into the cooperative fund, okay? District B is going to expense out of their general fund, their 40,000 of salaries and benefits over the course of the year, make a check, write a check to your district. You're going to deposit their payment into the cooperative fund. So that 100,000 goes into the cooperative fund. You're then paying the teacher over the course of the year out of the cooperative fund. The purpose of that then, that 40,000 from District B didn't go into your general fund and overstate your revenues and expenses in your general fund. We don't report the cooperative fund to anybody else because your part's already in your general fund. Their part's already in their general fund. So we've already accounted for it. So the cooperative, like when we do federal reporting, state reporting, the cooperative fund isn't rolled up into the total school district's expenditures. That makes sense? You can also, this also is used, it can be used with your city. You're sharing a pool for your swim team and you're responsible for paying part of that. And you're the owner or the fiscal agent of it. Or There's a lot of different situations. I think Lincoln is in conjunction with the city on YMCA's. There's some work like that. So a lot of different situations you might run into where you do it with another political subdivision. And if you end up being the fiscal agent, then that's where you would run that project through. Questions? You guys are a pretty quiet group. Not a lot of questions so far. All right, student fee fund. This is one really got misused initially when the one-to-one initiative really became a thing and we were buying computers and charging students fees for those computers. A lot of school districts were running that fee through the student fee fund. That wasn't allowable. Statute says only 3 things can be run through the student fee fund: extracurricular activities, post-secondary education, summer night school. It also says whatever you collect those fees for, you have to use it for that exact same purpose. So if you're collecting fees for football, you have to use it for football expenditures. Same thing if you're collecting for college credit, tuition, for post-secondary education type of stuff, fees, you have to use that to pay the college or the teachers or whatever the expenditure is related to that. The student fee fund is getting less and less used. It'd be because one of the things, like if you're charging fees for football, like I use that example, my recommendation is run that through the activities fund. You got a lot more freedom and flexibility with how you use those fees than if you do it that way. And this fund, it says you got to use it for football specifically.
Bryce, I have a question.
Yeah.
Can this be done with a non-public school?
We're talking cooperative fund, do we think?
Bill McAllister, which fund was this?
Political, so the answer, I think we're talking cooperative fund.
Just-
So a non-public school would not be a political subdivision, so it would not be allowable use of the cooperative fund there. In that situation. Good question. Yeah.
So if you have not a large amount of money in the student fee funds, but you don't know where it was designated to, because can we transfer that into the activity or how does that work?
So are you not using the student fee fund anymore for anything else at the time?
That's the goal.
Okay, so if you're in a situation where you've collected fees at some point, and you're not sure what they're for. So this is one thing we haven't got to yet, but it was getting real close to it. With board action, you can close any fund down. And then you have to transfer the proceeds to the general fund. You get no choice in which fund. It has to go to the general fund, but that's what I would do. Board action, close student fee fund, make a transfer to the general fund. That also applies. So when you get done with a bond project, we'll just go back to the bond fund or QC Puff as the 2 common ones I see this or get this question. You get done with a bond project and you have some funding, some late taxes came in, or you ended up collecting a little more taxes than you anticipated, and you have some funding sitting in your bond fund, but you've made your last bond payment. What options do you have? 1, you can leave the funding in there for a future bond project. It means that's that much less you have to ask for when you try to pass the next bond. 2, with board action, you can close that fund down. You can always reopen it later and transfer it to the general fund. Same thing, QC Puff. You get done with the QC Puff project, you can do that same thing if you want to, or you can leave it in there. To me, in the QC Puff especially, I'd probably just leave it in there. There's always something you can find that's going to be able to be used there. So that's kind of the last thing too, or I want to talk about. So being a recovering auditor, the gray area of school finance was a little bit hard for me to get my hands around at first. After I've kind of gotten comfortable with it, it's really helpful to you guys. And so I want a couple examples. We talk about gray area. Let's say that your school district has to do a roof replacement. I'm going to give you the number. What 4 funds do you think you could potentially do that roof replacement with? QC Puff, okay. Depreciation. Special building, one more. General, okay. So here's the scenarios. You have plenty of funding and spending authority available, and you want to do it through your general fund. You just do it as a replacement. You're replacing the roof. That's an allowable. Anything that's allowable in the depreciation fund or employee benefit fund as a sub fund is allowable in the general fund too. It's actually, sometimes we get school districts that'll transfer money into their depreciation fund to buy the bus or to do the roof because they think it has to go through depreciation fund. Only if you're out of budget authority would you do that. Otherwise, you're creating more work for yourself. You can do it in the general fund if you can do it in the depreciation fund or employee benefit fund. So general fund, depreciation, we just said, if it's a roof, if I would have my board pass it as a replacement and you can use the depreciation fund because it's for repairs, replacements, right? If you had the funding setting in your special building fund, I had my board pass that motion or that project as a roof improvement or a new roof, right? When do you ever put a roof on that's not better than the last version? So, and a building fund would be allowable. And then for those that kind of heard me talk before, I always like to say this. My predecessor, who kind of taught me the ropes in school finance, always used to say, and Russ Embody, for those that remember him, always used to say, there's not an engineer worth their grain of salt that can't find mold in a roof somewhere. So if you find mold, all of a sudden it can be a QC Puff project. It's a mold abatement project, right? Same thing, HVAC. Used to be, QC Puff used to allow indoor air quality as an allowable use, so people used it for HVAC replacement systems. That went away. They took that, they didn't like that. But you go out and work with an engineer who finds some mold in your HVAC system, gotta be some somewhere, right? You can do a mold abatement project with your HVAC. Same thing, track. You know, you're replacing the track, you can use your depreciation fund. You could use donations or whatever fundraising is through the activities fund. But if you're improving it, which again, if you're putting new service on it, building fund would be allowable there too. So there's some flexibility in those funds that way. Questions on that?
Bryce, did you say that money, I'm going back to that student fee fund?
Yeah.
And you said that there's money in there and you don't know what it was earmarked for with board action. I know with board action, you said you can close that account, but with board action, you can also move that money out of the general fund.
So if you close that account, so with board action, you could close that account, then you would have to transfer any proceeds to the general fund.
But you can't, if you don't close it, it has to stay there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So one of the things too, I don't think I actually hit on it, but in your depreciation fund, if you're in a situation where you have funding sitting in your depreciation fund and you don't know how it's expensed, so you should be tracking how we're expensing that out, what we have funding set in the depreciation fund for. I know a lot of schools started doing that in the last couple of years. They weren't doing it. But if you don't know what that funding is setting in your depreciation fund for, have your board pass whatever projects you use that funding for, have your board pass that project. That way you're covered. The board is made a motion, it's public record. We're using the depreciation funds for because they can change the purpose, right? You don't know what it was for, you got a public record. That's what I would do. Any other questions on funds? Okay. I know that is a lot of fun, but it kind of gives you the high level overview of funds. We will just kind of an FYI too. Stephanie's gonna go and we will do a break after that to give you a chance to stretch your legs and stuff, but feel free to jump out if you need to at any time as well, so.
Hello, I'm Stephanie, and I'm your favorite person to call when you have pupil transportation. Okay, so we're gonna talk about budgets today, Budget 101, and we're gonna go through the budget worksheet documents and kind of give you some guidance on that. Be sure and raise your hand if you've got a question, and we'll stop and go over that. Okay, so budgeting information, the website that you can see here on the screen, that's probably important to have as a favorite on your computer. All things budgeting and AFR related can be found on this website. Some of the important documents you might want to note is you can find a copy of your budget forms on this website, as well as on the Auditor of Public Accounts. There's access to the LC2 portal, and probably the most important document you want to print out is the budget timeline. This will give you a step-by-step of each date to make sure that you are reporting, if you have to go to a joint public hearing, to the report to the county by a certain date, that you're holding your budget hearings by a certain date. So print out that timeline, make sure that you have that readily available. Another important document is the checklist, or what you need to file by September 30th to not only NDE, but to the Auditor of Public Accounts and the County Treasurer. Also, your expenditure exclusions, which Kelsey will go through with you here shortly, the expenditure exclusion templates can be found here as well. We recorded the budget webinar a few weeks back, and that can be found on our website as well. If you want to review any of this information that we're going over, you can access that from our website. There's also PowerPoint slides from that as well. The budget text is a great document to use. This has detailed explanation of the budget terms, taxing fund descriptions, levy detail, explains how you can access your unused budget authority, your exclusions, if you need to do a levy override, or if you're going to exceed budget authority. This just gives you a step-by-step of what to do if you encounter any of those scenarios, or if you would like a more detailed description of how something operates. The school district budget instruction manual can be found not only on our website, but this directly comes from the Auditor of Public Accounts. And as you're going through each of your worksheet pages, it's important to be able to review this. There's many, like the first half of your budget worksheet, most of those pages have very few manual entries. Most of those are flow through pages. They come through from your worksheets. And so this manual is just a step-by-step. Here's what I enter on this page and on this line. So make sure you're accessing this instruction manual as well. So going through the school district budget cycle, there's a few things that you want to make sure you're looking at. Are you reviewing your current budget to make sure that you're not going to overspend before the end of the year? Do we need to do a budget amendment before the end of the year? Make sure you're holding a workshop with your board members to see what the goals are with not only your levy, but maybe projects that you have for the upcoming year. Get their input on what their expectations are. Make sure that you're holding your hearings to adopt the budget, and also if you have to go to a joint public hearing or if you're having the special hearing. And then continue to monitor your spending throughout the year, and please contact us if you feel like you might go over budget on any fund. You need to contact us, and we may need to consider doing a budget amendment, and we can help walk you through that. All right, so when preparing for the budget, there's no specific method to do this. You just really need to evaluate what are your district needs and limitations, and then what are your board goals. Review the prior year budget, maybe look at some of the prior year or two, the trends with your, look at your AFR, look at your annual financial report. I shouldn't use those terms. Annual financial report. Take a look at your annual financial report, your previous year budgets. Take a look at what's going on with some of that, and what are your trends? Are you trending, forward, positively, or do we need to make some changes? Things like that. On our website, on the website that I gave you a little bit ago, you can print out your budget authority pages, which also talks about your necessary cash reserve. You can print out your state aid, and you can print out your property tax authority papers. So make sure that you know what limitations you have to start with and work with as you're working through the budget. And then, of course, seek guidance from the outgoing superintendent or from your NCSA mentor, or call the NDE team here. We'd all be glad to help walk you through some of that. All right, so general fund disbursements and things to consider. So when you're planning the budget, 75 to 80% of your budget is going to be salary and benefits. So Has the board determined what are those increases for the next year? Have you heard what your benefit increase is going to be? Make sure that you're accounting for those. Make sure that you're thinking about, what if you had a special education student that moved into the district in December and you needed to hire another teacher? Is your budget accounting for things like that? Our big thing right now is vans. A lot of folks are gonna have to replace vans in the next year or two. So does your district have enough set aside to buy another vehicle? What if you have to buy a new mower, for example? What's a commercial mower? $10,000-12,000 easy? So think about, do we need to buy a mower? If you have to replace tires on your school bus, that's gonna be $12,000 to $15,000. So think about these major expenses when you're looking at your budget, and what do we need to plan in advance for? Any type of repairs, maintenance, replacements, new computers, instructional materials. Be thinking about all of that so that we make sure that we get that accounted for. All right, so just kind of to talk about where Bryce mentioned this as well, but just where some of your revenue sources come from. About 52% is local and, local county. So property tax, motor vehicle tax, interest, fines, and licenses. And then about 39% of your revenue sources come from the state. So your state aid, your state grants, apportionment, and your special education reimbursement. And then you've got about 8% in your federal grants, and then about 1% that's non-revenue. So just a food for thought. All right, so your budget authority is certified on or before March of each year. The certified budget authority, the document that you can print out from our website, easily shows you what your limitation is. It shows what your allowable reserve percentage is, and then it shows you if you have access to, if there was any unused budget authority from last year that you can access for this year. It also gives an explanation of how those funds are calculated. And then again, just to remind you, there's additional detail in the budget text about how this calculation is performed. Property authority or property tax authority certification, that used to, or it still is, but on this giant spreadsheet. But Michelle did a really great job this year. She put it into a nice form, just like your state aid and your budget authority, so that you can easily see what you have access to. Remember that if you need to access the additional percentage, that you must have 70% of your board's approval in order to access any additional property tax authority. But take a look at that document. It's very detailed. Let us know if you have any questions about how to calculate that and how to work that into your budget.
I got a quick question. So 70% is if you have a 6-member board, that's actually 5 then? And what, do you know what, and I apologize, this is new to me since I retired, but what month do most schools have their board approved, if they approve the additional 7%?
You can do it anytime once that authority comes out. I know a lot of school districts do it in like August or, early September, but you can do it anytime. I've got school districts that have already done that, just got it out of the way. So anytime that works.
And does anybody do it the same night they do the September budget?
You should do it ahead of time so that you know what you're accessing, but
If you trust your board.
yeah, because if you get to your budget hearing, you've had to publish that in the newspaper, and if the board votes no, then you've got to go back and redo your budget, then you got to republish it in the paper. So it's probably a good idea to do it ahead of time. Yeah, does that help?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so total allowable reserves, it's a budgeting tool, as Bryce talked about. It is advisable to have 3 to 4 months worth of school district funds in the bank, or expenses in the bank, to cover those shortfall months. So if you don't have 3 to 4 months of expenses set aside, then this can be used as a budgeting tool. I believe it's line 34 on the general fund worksheet of your budget. And this is where we can start to plan to, do additional tax asking in order to account for, building that up so that you don't want to be borrowing money to make payroll, in January. So let's work towards making sure that you have enough set aside in order to cover those months. The information for the total allowable reserves, when you enter that on your budget, it will automatically upload to the LC2 so that you can make sure that you're within your allowable reserve limitations. And if you're exceeding that for any reason, it'll flash in red, and then you can go back to your budget, correct it, and then try again. The calculation of total allowable reserves is basically if you had a $5 million budget and you're allowed 45%, that would be 2.25 mil. All right, so make sure you're utilizing your budget exclusions. And Kelsey will go over this in much more detail here shortly, but if you're up against budget authority, utilizing your exclusions, like your special grant funds list and early childhood, retirement exclusions, voluntary termination exclusions. It's important to utilize what you have access to if you need it. If you don't need the additional budget authority, then, that's great. But if you do, there is access to many available options, which Kelsey will go over in detail with you. If you are going to exceed your certified budget authority, and we need to possibly amend, then you will have to hold a public hearing, which includes ballot language stating that you've utilized your access to expenditure exclusions, and the amount will be approved for 1 fiscal year, and then it will become part of your base for next year. Okay, we're going to get started on the worksheet pages of the budget. So the first page you come to is the basic data input page. This is where you will enter the information from your certified valuations from last year, and then to get going. And then when your new valuations come in on August 20th, then you'll update this information. One of the tips and tricks I like to share with folks is that right there on that first line that says current school district taxable value, it's line 11 on the worksheet. It's line 11. You can put in a percentage to start, estimating what your valuations might be. And what that does by entering an estimate into that line, if you want to estimate 3% or 5%, what that does is it flows through to your special hearing page and it helps calculate your levy. And then you can use that as a tool. You can put it at, say, 3% and see, well, this is what it does to my levy. Or you can put it up to 5%. This is how it changes my levy. So it's a really good tool to kind of play with your numbers and see how that affects your levy, because the higher valuations you have, your levy will go down. Resources go up, levy goes down. So just it's a really great tool to play with. The other important thing about this basic data input page is you'll want to make sure that you enter your hearing location, times, dates on this page, because whatever is entered on this page will flow through to your budget hearing page, which is the page you'll want to post in the newspaper. So make sure you don't forget to enter the data here. All right, the next page is the cover page, and the data flows through from the other budget pages. So note that this is a no entry page. You do not want to manually enter anything. If you attempt to, you will corrupt the formulas and then it'll throw your budget off. So the only thing about this page that you want to enter is your check yes and no questions. Everything else is an automatic flow through from other documents. So just maybe make that note. Okay, pages 2, 3, and 4. It is very important to note that you do not want to enter anything on these pages. everything from these pages will flow through from your worksheet pages. So on your worksheet pages, which we'll get to here in a moment, you'll enter the prior year information from your audit. You'll enter an estimate for the current year information, and then you'll enter your budget information for the new year. This all flows through to pages 2, 3, and 4. And so you'll want to, the only thing you need to do on these pages is check that there's no formula errors. One important thing to note, and it's a check, it's one of the checkpoints of the auditor's office, is make sure that at the bottom where it says certified state aid, that should not be an estimate. That should be exactly the number that comes through from your state aid document. So make sure your state aid certification document is viewed and entered correctly. The other checkpoint is the county treasurer's balance. You should estimate 1% county treasurer's balance. That will be entered on your worksheet page. So again, you just want to make sure it's flowing through onto this page and that you see a county treasurer's balance. The only time you should not have a county treasurer's balance is if you just started the fund. So if the fund has been in existence, you will have a county treasurer's balance. So again, this is just a flow through page. Make sure that you're making sure verifying that the information is coming through correctly. And if there is a formula error, make sure you're contacting one of us so we can help you fix that. All right, the PT Request Act, page 6 is your growth percentage. It's you're allowed 2% plus real growth. So this will come through from your certified valuations on August 20th. And if you are landlocked, you may have no growth and you may only be allotted 2%. However, if you're not landlocked, if you have new subdivisions going up, you may have more growth. But what this does is this will calculate your 2% plus your real growth that comes from your certified valuations. And then it will tell you what your total allowable growth percentage increase can be and what the amount is that you can ask. This is different from your property tax authority request. This is 2% plus real growth. Your property tax authority is a different document and a different calculation. So just know that. So if the limit here, if you exceed the limit here, you can go right up and have the exact number and not have to go to the joint public hearing. But if you exceed the allowable number on this page, you will need to go to the joint public hearing and you will need to talk to the county about that. And it will tell you right here at the bottom, it'll say you must go or you do not need to go. So just make sure that you're checking this page often to see, as you're working through your worksheet pages, what is it showing on this page? Do I want to go to the joint public hearing? Do I not? So one important thing I do want to mention is the budget hearing, everybody has to go to, but everybody has to have a second hearing. So either you have to go to a special hearing or you have to go to the joint public hearing. You're explaining the exact same information at both hearings. There's really no difference except for the fact that one is posted in the newspaper and the other arrives via pink postcard. But don't be afraid to go to the joint public hearing because you're explaining the same information. There's no difference really. The joint public hearing, you do note that if you do go to the joint public hearing, you have to have one elected official present. All right, general fund lit exclusion schedule A of your budget documents. This is where you'll enter those expenditure exclusions. And whatever you enter on this page will automatically upload to the LC2 for you and then take away from your, so if you're over your total budget of disbursements and transfers, then it'll automatically subtract the exclusions and show you that you are still within or you're still out of budget on your maximum allowed amount. So make sure that if it's a retirement exclusion, make sure you're entering that correctly. If you have any questions about that, you're welcome to call us. Kelsey is our expert on expenditure exclusions, and we're all happy to help you through that. Schedule B. Schedule B, there's a highlight at the top, and I just want to make sure everybody understands. Schedule B is what uploads to the LC2. So please do not manually type anything in here. Otherwise, it will not upload to the LC2 correctly. This is a no entry page. There's one exception, and that occasionally occurs, and that is if you have bond valuation that's separate from your school district valuations on August 20th. If the county sends you a separate valuation for bond, contact Michelle or Bryce or I or Kelsey, and we will help you. But this shouldn't happen too often, and we'll help you through what can be entered manually on this. But otherwise, Schedule B, just put a big X on it. Okay, resolution setting the property tax authority request. This is a really great page because you're going to get asked lots of questions about, well, if we want to calculate this, or what's a, what's $100 of assessed value, various different things of how your levy is calculated. And this has all the details already listed on it. So refer to this page if you're getting asked those type of questions. This is a great page that already has those explanations on there for you. But this is also an important page because as you're having your budget hearing and the board is approving to set your tax authority, this document needs to be filled out. And this will be one of the documents you turn into NDE, the county, and the APA's office. So it doesn't matter if you can type in how the board voted. You can print it out, have them sign it. It doesn't matter as long as it does get filled out and it does get submitted. Budget hearing, this is the notice of budget hearing. This next page, this is what will get posted in the newspaper. So again, the data flows through on the calculations for your actual, your estimated, and your current budget from your worksheet pages. That all flows through. And then your date and times and locations flow through from that basic data input page. So, but a good thing to do is to review this before it goes in the newspaper. Check the reasonability of it. Are your, from actual to estimated to the current budget, are you, is there any red flags? You're not going from $50,000 to $10 million in a bank account, are you? So, check the reasonability of it. Make sure that, just check it before you post it in the newspaper. Make sure there's nothing that's going to flood your office with phone calls. Okay, we talked about this a minute ago. This is the special hearing page. If you don't go to a joint public hearing, you will need to post this page in the newspaper and go to the special hearing. But this is a really great page to use when talking to your board about the budget and the levies, just because it has last year's operating budget for each fund, and then it has this year's operating budget. It has last year's property tax request and this year's property tax request, and then you can compare the levy between last year and this year. And remember how I told you on the basic data input page that on line 11, you could put in that percentage of 3% or 5% and kind of estimate what your valuations might be? You can do that. It'll show right here at the top property valuations, and it'll show the change. You could put 3% in here, print it out, and then go back, change it to 5%, print it out, and then you can show your board, here's the two different scenarios that, depending on what our valuations do. So this is a really great page to reference. It'll show how much your change in operating budget or, in your property tax request, how much it changed. This is really a great tool, and this is also the one that will go in the paper. Okay, budget worksheets. So your general fund, I'm going to start with the general fund, but it's pretty much the same on all of the worksheet pages. The first column is column D, and this is where you will enter your information directly from your audit. If you open your audit about halfway through, half to 3/4 of the way through, you'll see the supplemental pages. And this is where you can enter your beginning balance, according to what the auditors gave you. You'll enter your expenses, enter your revenues, and then your ending balance should match what the auditors gave you on those pages. And you would do that for each page. And this is really important that you get this right, because the auditors, the auditor of public accounts, if this does not flow through correctly with the correct numbers, if there's any sort of variation, they will be emailing you to ask you what's the variation in numbers. So make sure you're entering directly from the audit.
On that worksheet, can you add those different things under there and it adjusts them? Like on the left side, before you add in the actual codes, does that adjust the numbers there as you're adding underneath, or?
It does. So it'll add for you. Yep, it'll total for you at the bottom. So make sure that your beginning balance is correct and make sure that your total expenses, total revenue and ending balance. And if there's a code on your audit that you don't see on here, go up to the top, click review, unprotect the sheet and add a code.
Okay.
You can do that. Mhm. Or you can lump some, a couple of them together, but yes, yep. And then on the middle column, column E, this is where you're going to want to put in your actual estimated from this year. Now, I want to tell you, I don't want you to spend too much time on column E because it's just an estimated amount. What we really need to know on column E is your ending balance. So at the bottom of the page, what really matters is that ending balance. What we want to know is that ending balance will tell us, do you have 3 or 4 months worth of reserves sitting in there to cover the shortfall months of expenses? Or do we need to, build up on the new budget and start working towards that? So that's a really important number to know on column E is what do you have to move forward with so that we can better plan in the new year? Any questions about that? Okay, so column F, your third column, this is where we're going to enter your new budget for the year. The most important part is the expenses or the top half. The top half is what's critical. The auditor's office isn't going to ding you if you get more money than you expect, but they will ding you if you spend more money than you expect. So make sure you got the top half right. That's the most important part. So make sure the first line on there is your salary and benefits. So again, make sure that's accurate because that's the majority of your budget right there. So make sure you're accounting for that accurately. And, again, what if you had to hire another teacher? Is there enough cushion in there to make sure that you can do that? And then the next couple of lines would be your special education. And remember, that's an exclusion of your budget. So make sure that you're looking at the prior year trends and giving yourself a little bit of an increase to account for things this year, but that's again, an exclusion of your budget. Just go through and make sure that, watch the prior year trends as you're entering into that. Make sure that you're thinking about, do you have anything that needs to be transferred to depreciation or nutrition or activities? This is where you would account for that outgoing as well. And then the tip and trick about these forms, what's kind of funny about these forms is whatever your total expenditures, total requirements are for the top half has to match the bottom half. So get the top half right, and then you can kind of estimate the bottom half and make that match. So anyway, the things again, the only important pieces that really need to be a little more exact on your revenue side is make sure your state aid is correct. Make sure you've accounted for your 1% county treasurer's balance, and then make sure that your property tax asking is also listed at the bottom of the page. So those are the 3 key points of the revenue side. Any questions? Okay. So this is a picture of the lower half of the budget. And again, the things I just talked about, making sure, that your, ending balance matches your top balance, county treasurer, things like that. Okay, so uploading the budget into the LC2, I want to encourage you to do that often because the LC2 has red flags in there. If you are exceeding budget authority or if you're exceeding property tax authority or your allowable reserve limitations. And there is unlimited uploads to the LC2. So make sure as you're going through your budget that you're uploading to see where you stand. And then make sure you hit the save button. Save often, because if you upload and you forget to save, you lose everything. So save, save, save. Okay, so some budget data reminders, that we've already kind of talked about with state aid, but also motor vehicle tax. Make sure that that is similar to previous years, no extremes. We've already talked about the county treasurer's balance, and then I did mention that so in your worksheet pages, whatever you enter in column D, the ending balance becomes your beginning balance for column E. Your ending balance for column E becomes your beginning balance in column F. So make sure your beginning and ending balances don't have any errors and that those are flowing through correctly. All right, I have attached just a fun page of how to calculate your levy. Total tax request divided by assessed valuation times 100 equals the levy, and on down the line. So this is kind of a fun page if you're getting questions about, well, how much will this generate type of thing? How much will 1 penny change? So this is just a fun page to note. Okay, so one last reminder about make sure you are reviewing your funds. Do you need to transfer any money? Are you going to go over budget expenditures? Do we need to do an amendment? So just make sure you're checking on that now so that we have time. If we have to amend the budget, you will have to hold a hearing. So we want to make sure that gets done before August 31st. If you need to amend your budget, this would be required if any fund will exceed the total budget of disbursements and transfers out. Again, must approve and hold the hearing by August 31st. And then and also note your property tax request can't change. And then if you do need to do that, the required action would be to submit proof of publication to the state auditor, the county clerk, and NDE. Make sure you're submitting your proof of publication, your updated budget pages, and your board minutes showing that you amended the budget. And again, if you have any questions, call us. We'll help walk you through it. If you need to amend your budget, especially if it's general fund, depreciation fund, employee benefit fund, or anything along those lines, anything that affects the LC2, you will need to upload to the LC2. We will need to help unlock that for you. You will need to upload to the LC2 and make sure you're within your budget limitations for that as well. Okay, our favorite subject, pupil transportation. Okay, so a couple of things, the forms, and a lot of you may not know this, but our forms were outdated since 2004. So I had a wonderful group that included the Federal Motor Carrier, the Nebraska State Patrol, the president of NSTA, and myself, and we updated the forms. So there are new pre-trip inspection forms to use this year, and they include instructions. We have updated the annual / 80-day inspection packet forms, and it includes mechanic qualifications and instructions. These better align with federal forms. So not only are they 20-year newer forms, but they better align with state and federal requirements. So make sure that your school district is switching over to these forms and utilizing these for the new year. Also, something to keep track of this year is the auditors are now asking us to keep track of mileage. If you may have something on your software that already keeps track of the difference between your route, your activity, and your sped mileage. If you don't, go to my website. There is an example form you can use on my website. It's right at the top under announcements that you can use. But this is a requirement when you fill out your pupil transportation report, which is part of your state aid funding. So this is an important piece to make sure you're getting done each year. Also, there is on my website, there is a new checklist and reminders of what you need to remember to get done before the school year starts. And then I have a quarterly Zoom meeting that I would invite you all to join, or you can send your pupil transportation directors, drivers, anybody's welcome. This is I try to keep this a super open format so people can ask any questions. Don't be afraid to ask what you don't know, you don't know. So this has been a really great thing for everybody. And a lot of people really like it.
Do you know when your first one's gonna be?
My next one is
Or next?
September.
Will be in the SFOS email.
It's the third Monday in September, whatever that is. Is that the 15th? Can't read. Oh, I have reading glasses.
Yes, it is.
15th. It'll be September 15th. Okay, van, here's the van updates. So in 2005, in 2005, 12 and 15 passenger vans, if you purchased them new, they were outlawed by the federal government due to several safety factors. One, a very important one, was rollover risk. But the federal government failed to define the used aspect of that. And so there's been a lot of confusion over the years. And so recently in May, the national standards were updated to include that all new and used vans must be 10 total passengers. So that's 9 passengers plus your driver. And the vehicle type rating must be multi-purpose vehicle. Now, this is sort of easy to tell a little bit because any vehicle that holds 11 seats or more automatically is classified as a bus, not school bus, and that is illegal to drive. And anything under 10 or less is a multi-purpose vehicle. That's by federal standards, that is how that's rated. Nobody is grandfathered in on the old, there was some misguidance that you could have 10 passengers plus the driver, and that will be changing. It is 10 total. And so no one is grandfathered in on this. Now, just to kind of give you a time frame on this, we are starting rule revision. The national standards will post at the end of July, beginning of August, and then we expect to start rule revision in September. And then we're hoping to have all of that finalized and signed off by the governor by about this time next year. We may or may not be able to write in a grace period. We will ask for that, but again, until we get further into that and we speak with the attorneys, we don't know about a grace period. One thing to keep in mind is if you have a Chevy Express van, most Chevy Expresses are built on a 15-passenger chassis, which is illegal. And there's no second stage manufacturer that will upgrade a Chevy. So if you have a Chevy, it's done. So that's the unfortunate part for those that have a Chevy. Another important thing is that dealers cannot remove seats for you. And that's where some of this came into play and why the federal government is cracking down on this. Because dealers would go physically remove seats out of a vehicle and then sell it to you as a 10-passenger van. That's illegal to do. The only way a vehicle can be modified is by a federally approved second stage manufacturer. So you can't remove seats and the dealer can't remove seats. And the dealer removing seats, they don't have the authority to recertify the vehicle. Only a second stage manufacturer does. So I have 2 second stage manufacturers that are close to here. They're in Kansas. And if you need phone numbers, information, please email me. I can give you a wealth of information to help you with all of this. Couple of things to look for is if you open your driver's side door, there is a tire and load sticker. If it says total 10, and then if the second sticker about halfway down says MPV, you're golden. If it says 12 passengers, or if the second sticker says school, bus, not school bus, you're gonna need to look at switching those out. So make sure, I know there's gonna be a lot of questions on this. I'm gonna be over here, so make sure you come ask me so I don't hold up the presentations today. So just make sure that my contact information is on the screen. So make sure you're calling me, emailing me. Several school districts will send me spec sheets to look at with them. So just let me know what I can do to help you. So, okay, two quick other things. Next week at admin days, so drug and alcohol testing is a requirement of all your CDL drivers, and I will be having a class next week. So I will also have a table across from registration. So make sure and stop by and ask me questions there, join my class type of thing. So, okay, I'm gonna try to outdo Bryce on his joke. So now that my presentation is done, I'm going to go stand outside. So if anybody's looking for me, I'm outstanding.
That was a lot better.
Thank you.
Break until 10:15.
I did.
No, I was gonna go to this restroom.
Yeah.
All of our
Usually
meetings.
a couple of them.
Oh, okay. Yes, summer, okay, all right. She's a pleasure to work with. Didn't she retire?
Well.
Right, but just.
Oh. Yes, so drug and alcohol, and then we'll talk about that. And then I'll have a table across the registration. Now I'll be kind of upstairs doing budget, but I have folks that will be stationed at the table. Yeah, well, and there's my cell phone is on this part.
That's the best.
Call me or it's a lot. It's a lot, but
I hear about the van.
I went by at 6:30. I'm like,
well, let me help you. So they're local. So, well, I'm glad to meet you.
I think they hired local.
That's why I can't find it.
Which is nice. All right, I'm gonna go make something. Giving it. It's great because, you know, I can't get my personal hospital.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
It's hard to figure out.
Did you ever set up the right?
I didn't say
She transfers. So hers has got the. She doesn't come
right in. We're gonna see if we can make it.
Levy, so you can tax the amount you need.
Sure.
Forget about it. Try to make it make sense. Yeah.
And maybe eventually they do ask.
Yeah, if you have questions, reach out.
Renee spots, like they use that down.
Oh, yeah. I actually.
Don't hesitate. That's what we're talking.
For things that.
Time when they said that, I had to write that down, dang it.
So.
Great, we're back on time.
Yeah, look at, how many questions are here?
Get started. You started at 9. Yeah. We're okay on time right now. Stephanie, you did well. Yeah, well, everybody's got it.
Yeah, so I was gonna tell that gentleman, we just started. That's not a year.
And we started 10 minutes late, so we got it down. Yep. And you didn't seem like you were hurrying.
I didn't. I was trying to be able to, you know, better get a solution.
Yeah, we're doing, we need the property tax authority.
Started there.
Then I like to have.
Exactly, that's what I was out.
We've heard it. Use it or not, use it. I tell people.
Bryce will bring you through.
Put it there. So it's just like
CSA.
any or let's-
Back on track. Okay, so here, I would look at this.
I like.
Here are your
So
percents.
if something comes up at the last minute. It's there, we don't have to.
Can we see what's going on?
We're one of the first schools we-
It's like mine's good. Yes, not done there.
You are right. Well, depends on your philosophy.
Sounds like a great button.
And mine will go to that.
I knew she was from Florida.
Okay.
So we're gonna have, I just wonder if like this room is not.
So you don't think yours is either?
So that's.
I think she's already.
I know.
Oh, no. Yeah, and she's got. She's the one that. Yeah, never mind, she had six a day to get done by the end of the month, but.
But it's been
She does
interesting.
two and sends four back, but she does two and sends four back.
You know what, it's only because I answered and I'm answering already, so they're giving me, and so I'm trying.
Sure if our cables are not electrified, so, yes, so we can get you an extension cord.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta be, we want you to be.
We're actually.
I'm just trying to wrap it.
Well, like, yeah.
Yeah.
We're trying everything.
Yeah, we thought, is it us?
Suburban, minivans, 14 passenger minibus does not require CDL.
Yeah,
And
I
you
mean,
still can buy vans, it's just you have to get in the, that limitation of 10 passenger MPV. So, yeah, I have, can you send me an email and I'll forward you? I've got a direct line to those manufacturers. You go directly.
I think that should be good.
Tattoo.
I can even put it here and use it.
Yes.
Because I got.
I'll just put it here and then getting ready to put a new one on this arm. I want
In
to
charge.
Because if he needs a tire. Oh, very
Access and-
cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, we'd love, because we're.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sure is
Email me,
nice.
I'll give you, I'll email you
There
back
we
with
go.
the two second stage manufacturers. Because I have a direct line to both of them. And,
They're charging and they're not.
so, yeah, we'll get you set up.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
And I wrote some down, but that was the one I missed.
Analogy of a fire hydrant back.
That's how you feel a little bit?
I love it. I gotta know it, but.
So here, I'm gonna have her answer. I was writing it down.
There's a Diane in
Extra on.
here.
Yeah, by this, I was coming too. And
I didn't know they
Yep,
were here.
no,
I just got a
was telling-
message from her.
Yeah, I just sounded like, okay, you know where Ellen is.
I don't know. That's right.
We'll get he and him.
There's one, is someone over here from Elba?
Yes.
Here's Diane. You just sent me a message.
I'm Michelle. We've been talking.
So I will show you.
Don Kelly.
The code.
And then so you can work on the.
And
Hopefully
yes.
our-
And enrollment.
What census is auditing through this facility?
Yeah, that would be.
I think he's familiar with it.
No, you mean right now?
He's familiar with you. He's just doing having access until recent. Well, there's two portals, right? So the
Right,
new
legacy
portal-
and the new one.
Yeah,
It's in the
new
old
portal
one.
I just.
That's
just
right,
got
legacy.
to see. Legacy.
And I'm in, I just got access.
Well, census enrollment are in legacy. So, yeah, I've been in the legacy one. When I get to this.
Where you at?
That's where I have to know what a code looks like. So well, if he sends you one and you're like, this doesn't look like. Well, see, if I'm done with taking it, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. That's why I say.
Perfect. She had an activation code from the, you want it in like admin 2014 or something like that. Yeah, it must have been.
I don't know.
I bet that was.
Which one am I looking at?
The census and an office.
So she asked us.
So go to actually go.
Yes,
sir. See, and that's what I used to get that code and then I.
You've been in legacy before, to waste.
Legacy, yeah, no problem with legacy.
I've been in there too several times.
She needs the district user.
I think I might make it through the day.
Okay, and then there's one behind you. Okay,
Thank you. I'll try and get that done tomorrow.
When on budget for our, I had to.
Well, see, and I was so skilled. About that.
I'm glad they reached out.
So
That makes sense.
nobody's gonna.
If I was, I can see anyone.
I thought he did.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started here in about a minute.
Okay, I'll work on that.
Okay, thank you.
I'm here all day. So. Okay, thank you.
I'm tired.
And I was just thinking, I was trying to think of who
Yeah.
Yeah, this code will solve. Okay, great. Stephanie got copy paste to put it that way. If I scoot further, I can.
Well,
All right. So I'm gonna do my best Troy Holtz impression. Usually Troy is here for the new soup orientation to talk about NCSA. They cover, since we're state employees, we can't, state agency, we can't purchase rolls or anything like that. So NCSA has purchased the rolls and the coffee. They usually come talk. I think they're a good resource. So I told Troy they had to go out and cover something else today. And I would cover his couple of slides for him. So know that Troy would touch base with Troy or any of them over at NCSA, and they'd be much more help to you. But basically, I think what Troy wanted me to remind you is that NCSA is a good resource for you, especially as a new superintendent business manager. They have all those different groups for soups, principals, business managers. Make sure that you take advantage of them. I know that they have, usually for a new superintendent, they'll pair you up with an experienced one to help you through that first year or two. So I'm not sure all the details of that, but I'm sure that they would be glad to talk to you about that. I know that they have a bunch of things, upcoming events that they wanted to note. That was Administrator Days, obviously next week. NDE will be out there on Wednesday, and then they have the Thursday and Friday morning out there. Business Managers Workshop on July 30th. Student Legal Issues Workshop, August 7th, School Law Update, September 17th. And then you can see the NCSA tailgate and webinar series is throughout the year. So I know that they are just really involved and helpful to you guys as you work through learning the roles and the resource that you need. So I don't know that I have a lot more to say for them, but what's that? Am I missing anything that the Troy usually says? No. Okay, all right. I think, again, I'm just gonna say, use them as a resource, touch base with Troy, or Dan, and,
Just a note on one of the slides, he found out on the upcoming event slide, the business manager workshop is July 30th instead of the 31st. Some slides have that updated, but the online one may not, but this one is, but just noting that.
and my favorite part about his usual spill is that he usually says that the NDE staff is great support. So
Many times.
I want to highlight that. All right, with that, we're gonna keep it moving, and Kelsey's gonna come up. July.
And she's gimpy, so.
Good morning. All right, I'll be talking to you about exclusions, the LC2, and then finishing up with option or enrollment option. To start off, there are two types of exclusions, the levy exclusion and expenditure exclusion. Both these exclusions allow for more flexibility in your budget. Levy exclusions allow districts to increase their levy above the $5 limit without state board approval, while the expenditure exclusions do require state board approval. They allow the districts to spend more than their certified budget authority. There are several expenditure exclusions that do not need state board approval. These expenditures include sped transportation and other related student services coded to the 2100s and 2190s, as well as any grant listed on the special grant fund list. So if you're worried about exceeding your budget authority, please review the special grant fund list to see if there are any exclusions that you might be able to utilize. As previously mentioned, there are certain exclusions that do not need state board approval. These exclusions can be found on the special grants fund list located in section B of the LC2. However, the majority on the list majority on the list already have state board approval. There are some that are district specific, and those are marked with asterisks on the grant list. These exclusions will need state board approval, so please send your request to me with your district name, your district number, the amount of the exclusion request, and the purpose of it. I need like another hand. The Schedule A can be found in your budget document. This is where you'll find your general fund exclusion within the LC2. When uploading your budget document into the LC2, the Schedule A will automatically populate. Schedule A is also where you'll enter things such as repairs for infrastructure, judgments, distant education reimbursements, as well as any approved exclusions. These next several slides, I will cover the exclusions that need state board approval. First up is the early childhood education grant. If your district has qualified for this grant, you did receive an email from me with a template to complete already. The amount that is listed on the approval for the exclusion, it will pre-populate into your LC2. While the early childhood education grant does not need state board approval, it will remain in your budget base and will be used to calculate your future budget authority. For the new elementary attendance site exclusion, you must have qualified for the allowance. This exclusion can be related to operating costs such as salaries, utilities, and building maintenance for the first year only. If your district has a natural disaster declared by the governor or FEMA, you can
request an exclusion for the amount of the damage repairs. To qualify for the district education courses, you must offer courses through the ESU Coordinating Council. The amount of the exclusion is equal to the amount that the district who is utilizing the distance education payment to your district. This next one is the big one of the year, the retirement and contribution increase. This contribution increase allows districts to exceed their expenditure limitation by a specific dollar amount. The amount should not exceed the difference between the employer's contribution rate and the budget amount for the employee salaries. During this last legislative session, a bill was approved to change the amount of the retirement contribution increase. This change allowed the district to include their 24-25 salaries as well as their 24-25 and amount into the 25-26 year. And then as well, you can include 24-25 into 26-27. The 25-26 contribution increase was reduced to 8.08 from 9.88. And it will continue to fluctuate based on the funding of MPERS. However, the coding will stay the same. The first 7.35% will be continued to be coded to 230 through 236, and the difference will be coded to 237. The current template that is now online has changed. There's now 3 tabs. The first tab, you'll just enter your district information, and then it'll give you the list of your expenditure exclusion total. Slide 2 is your 25-26 salary estimated amount, or tab 23 is your 24-25 estimated or actual amount for 24-25. It does not matter what you want to enter since we are almost to the end of 24-25. If you know your actual, go ahead and enter that in there. For simplicity, you can actually email me just the spreadsheet back. You don't need to convert it into a PDF. If we need a PDF, I'll go ahead and convert it for you. Next up is the voluntary termination agreement. This is for certificated teachers who are not part of the bargaining group. The value of the current and future incentives cannot be more than $35,000 per employee and must be paid within 5 years of the agreement or until a certificated teacher becomes eligible for Medicare, whatever comes first. Oops. On the budget website, you can find a list of the expenditure exclusions that need state board approval, the filing deadlines for the exclusion, which for this next board meeting on August 8th, the deadline is next Monday, the 21st. So if you want to have an exclusion for the August board meeting, please get that to me as soon as possible. The full special funds grant list is on there, as well as the templates that I just went over. On requesting state board approval, we are in need of the templates that this states your district name, your district number, which is often forgotten. So please include that. The type of exclusion and the amount as previously stated. The state school board's approval of the exclusion will be posted to our website within 5 business days after their board meeting. And please note that you are able to include the exclusion in your budget planning before the state board's approval. Next is the LC2. This is your lid computation form and is located in the NDE portal. Instructions on how to complete the LC2 can be found in the FOS website. It's important to note that when updating your budget into the LC2, that you use the correct format. Otherwise, you will get an error. The purpose of the LC2 is to be used to help you with your budget and is used to confirm that your budget is compliant and does not exceed any limitations. If it is also used to calculate your unused budget authority, your goal is to get the unused budget authority down to 0. If it's not in compliance or if a limitation has been exceeded, you will get an error and you will not be able to proceed. Sorry. Newbie here. The LC2, each year when you certify your budget authority will automatically pre-populate into section A of your LC2. If you have any unused budget authority, the value will be listed on the left-hand side like shown on the slide. You will need to enter the amount on the right-hand side of the slide in cell A355. Your total allowable budget authority will then populate in A780. If you held a successful special election to increase your budget authority or levy, you will need to indicate that on your LC2. When you click the yes button in either of these boxes, more information will be requested of you. Please be sure to review your checklist to make sure that you have all supporting documentation that is necessary. Are there any questions about the LC2 before we move on, Bryce?
Just real quick, this was something we had further discussion on. We were out at North Platte doing this. The property tax authority, I think, is helpful just to hit on again because it's newer and it is kind of the political hot button right now. And so a couple of things I want to note on this. One, she noted on down there at the bottom that D310 is a number that says increase in sped and foundation aid, especially for your newer ones out there. It's not going to make any sense. It didn't make sense when they passed the bill, to be honest. We tried to talk them out of it, but they wanted a number to report to the public of how much, what it was LB 583 2 years ago, how much that was going to reduce property taxes. There's no number. There's no way they can check that amount. You can leave that as zero on there. You'll get a call from us saying, hey, are you sure you want to do that? Politically, that might not be a great idea. We've had some schools do it and wanted to intentionally leave a zero there. That's your choice. You can do that. But for that number, I would recommend, so LB 583 added foundation aid and it increased the sped reimbursement from around 42% to about 80%. So to me, what I would put there if I was at a school district is I would take half of my sped reimbursement, I'd put it there, and I'd put my foundation aid amount there. It doesn't exactly work that way. If you're an equalized district, part of your foundation aid reduces your total aid. So you might just do the part that if you're an equalized district, the non-resource accounted, the $600 per kid. There's 2 lines on your certification document, which Michelle will talk about here in a little bit, but I would use that amount and half of your sped reimbursement is that amount in that line. A couple other things to note. If you do go out and get a board approval for the additional authority, that amount carries forward. So it's like a snowball. Even if you don't use it, it gets added to your snowball going down a hill and it makes your authority bigger in future years. You have to determine, just to be clear, I'm not telling you to do that. You have to, but you need to be clear and help your board understand the decision points of why you may want to do that. Because one of the things you have to consider with property tax authority is it includes your building fund and the general fund. That means when you have building projects come up that maybe not typical, like year to year, you're pretty good, but all of a sudden you need to do a big building project like replace your roof or HVAC system or track, football field, whatever it is. You may not have property tax authority to do that in the building fund like you used to do, unless you've stored up some property tax authority. So those are some of the considerations you need to take into account when you're determining whether you're gonna have your board do that or not. Yeah, was there a question?
So if the board does approve the additional taxing authority, the only place that gets entered in is in the LC2. It doesn't go into your budget document anywhere.
It doesn't, no, it doesn't show up on the budget document.
But your LC2 will take it into account when you upload your budget. And
Correct. It's gonna be tracked. It'll be reported to the legislature. Be very aware of that. Like, we're required to send that information over to the legislature in the fall. So they're gonna have the information, know who, and let me tell you, the governor's office is looking very closely at who's voting to increase grab the board additional authority. And they're watching the unused, I'll have a slide on it next week at admin days, but they're looking at who's voting on it. What is the unused authority amount total? Those are the keys to what they're looking at. So.
But you're getting all that data from what we input into the LC2.
Correct. It's coming right off the LC2. Yep.
Thank you.
So, and keep in mind too, the other thing I think that gets confusing especially when you're newer in this, is the joint public hearings, 2% that you get plus real growth of additional property tax authority without having to go to the joint public hearing is separate than this property tax authority and the growth in that. Those two things are getting confused. They kind of work together. If you're grabbing more property tax authority, you may, and you're using it, you may have to go to the joint public hearing. But you can also grab it and not end up at the joint public hearing, or use it all and still not be able to go to the joint public hearing because of other factors impacting your property tax authority. They work kind of hand in hand, but they're separate and calculated separately. Any questions on property tax authority? Just there's a good chance to jump up here and make sure we didn't have anything.
What were the two numbers you said to put in there on that D 32? Half of sped reimbursement?
Basically half of your sped reimbursement from the state, because it went from 42 to 80%. So we just make it easy, grab half of it. Again, they can't audit or they have no way to check that number. And then if you're a non-equalized district, the amount of foundation aid you're getting as well. If you're an equalized district, I would just grab the portion that's outside the resource calculation. And technically, if I was a non-equalized district, I'd probably just grab that amount and not the sped, because sped actually flows through the TIOSA formula and shows up as an accountable receipt, reduces your overall equalization aid too, but that's pretty deep into the weeds, so. All right, we'll keep rolling if there's no more questions. Just want to give you another chance at property tax authority questions. Okay.
All right. If you do receive a message on the LC2, it's important that you can't submit, you won't be able to submit it with an error. So it'll be necessary to go back through, review your budget, make any necessary updates, make sure that you're utilizing any of the exclusions or the special grants fund list. So that way you can get all your limitations and errors fixed. The budget checklist, these next few slides, the main things to point out here is make sure that you are utilizing the LC2. As you are using it, make sure you push save and recalculate. Otherwise, it won't necessarily calculate correctly. And then make sure that you're publishing your public notice hearings and making sure that they're actually being published, because there is certain dates that you have to have it within. If it's not posted, then you have to repost it before you can hold your hearing. And submit your budget documents to NDE, the APA's office, and your county clerk by September 30th. And then your property tax resolution needs to be submitted to your county, but no later than October 15th. Once your budget has been approved and adopted by your school board, you'll need to send copies of the supporting documentation to the APA's office, the county clerk's office, as well as upload them as a single document into the NDE LC2 for our review and approval. And to make this process more easier, we are trying to align all three agencies to be the same requirements for all their documentation. Once we have reviewed and approved your documents, you will receive a confirmation from us. And it is important to know that we will not accept any email or paper copies of your budget. So please submit them in your LC2 as a single document. Next is the enrollment option program. This can be found in Rule 19. New this year, the enrollment option application is a fillable PDF, and we've also placed the Spanish version of the application and FAQs on our website, and the current version is up to date. And then also any applications that you do receive, you must keep at your district until either the student graduates or they turn 21, whichever comes first. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Michelle. And finally, starting July of last year, a student can now option once in elementary school, once in middle school or junior high, and once in high school for a total of 3 times. This is a change because it used to be once you optioned, your option was good through high school. So now as long as the student has completed the building that they're in, they can option into the next building. So elementary school, they can option in junior high. They finish junior high, middle school, they can option in high school. There are still exceptions that are available, like if the student moves, then the options start all over again. And finally, each year, the enrollment option rejection report must be completed in June. If your district hasn't submitted that report, please do so as soon as possible, as it was due 2 weeks ago. Are there any questions?
The middle school, what is defined as the middle school for the option?
So it's either 6 through 8 or 7, 8, depending on what your district has.
We just go with what our district has.
Yes, it's
not-
whatever your building designation is. So if you have a single building for all your grades, there is a specific designation for middle or
Yeah.
junior high, and that's what you'll use for that.
And a student doesn't need a re-option if they're going from sixth grade to seventh grade and staying in the same district.
No, as long as they're staying in the same district, their option will continue forward. It's just if they decide they want to go to a different high school than they want to be in. And actually, if there are a resident student currently and they do decide to re-option, the option district has to fill out their section 2 if it's after the deadline to release the student from your district instead of the resident districts. So that is a new change as well.
These are the applications to the district, not to the building.
I'll make sure she's all updated.
That's great, they did that.
All right, hello all, I'm Michelle. Show of hands, are we confused yet or too much information? Yeah, okay. Well, this is gonna, like Bryce said, it's getting to get more into the weeds if you're a first year, even a second year. So the takeaway from this, and I think Bryce forgot to mention it, is the takeaway from this is we're giving you the resources you need to help you. So it's the user's manual, it's the budget text document, it's the TIOSA document. So just knowing that all those documents are out there for you to review. And of course, our website has all the links which we've been sharing with you. So I'm gonna go over, you did budget 101, I'm gonna go over TIOSA 101 and get started. And again, don't feel shy about raising your hand and asking questions so we can address it as we go along. Okay, so what is TIOSA? TIOSA is the Tax Equity and Educational Opportunity Support Act. Notice I had to read that, and that's my job. So I had to read that. So it's the statute that defines state aid. It creates the basic concept for the present state aid formulas. Equalization aid and foundation aid are the largest components of state aid. But ultimately, it's a very complex set of formulas that can be very hard to understand. So what do we have for you to help you understand? We have the TIOSA document. So the TIOSA document has 2 sections in it where it goes through, explains what the component of state aid is, and then the part 2 of the document kind of gives you more in depth of what the numbers or what the areas that we pull in to come up with that calculation. Again, that can be kind of confusing as well, but ultimately it decodes the components of equalization aid. And again, it's on our website. Secondary document that we have, it's for those, I want to call it the not so dumb questions. So there's no questions that are dumb that you can bring to us. We probably have some, but we wouldn't tell you that. But anyway, there's no dumb questions. So don't be afraid to ask those. This FAQ document, if you don't know what formula students are, if we say formula students, what are my formula students? You know what your enrollment is, you know what your student counts are, but what does formula students mean to you? You can go to this document and it's going to give you a great description. I'm going to talk about needs and resources and possibly poverty allowance in my next couple slides. This document breaks it down and is very helpful to those of you that are new. And maybe you move to a new district and one of the components of state aid is not something that you've ever utilized. All these documents can help you get a better understanding. And then you can call me at any point and we can discuss and go from there. A lot of our slides have at the bottom where you can find these documents. So if you go back later in the day or in the next week, just know we've got those websites listed on there for you. Another document we call this a chart. So this chart really, if you see there's pluses and there's all through the document. So it shows you how we add up the things. So the top area of this page with the box around it, this is your needs. So these are the needs associated to educating the students in your school district. So you'll see the box needs there. Then we minus resources. So the next box with the box around it, these are the resources. So these are the resources that your district has to build your cash flow. So it's your yield for local effort, tax proceeds, net option funding, allocated income tax, other receipts. Then of course that foundation aid that we talk about. So we're going to talk more about foundation aid in the next slides. And then how state aid is calculated, how do we bring those together? So at the bottom, it's your net option funding, income tax, the community achievement, that's for the learning communities. And then we bring back the box before, you might have seen just 60% of foundation aid. We now bring all that foundation back aid, so you do get that, you would still get that $1,500 per formula student. And then if there was a prior year correction, either negative or positive, that's part of the formula as well. And we come up with that total amount that will be paid to you each year. There's a little color coding. The chart down there shows a little color coding to help you out. Again, first glance, it can be a very confusing document, but if you utilize this with your state aid certification form, it will really come together for you, I think, and help you understand how we're doing the calculation. All right, so the TIOSA process. 2 times we're recalculating the amount. So certification is done early in the spring, on or before March 1st. So we'll be starting to gather information. You've been in the portal, having to do some collections. So there's items there that are starting to prep for either recalc or the upcoming calculation. So the calculation takes historically, he's standing here already waiting to jump in.
I was gonna just hit pause if when you're at a good spot, and we got a celebrity.
Oh, I didn't see that. Come on in.
So go ahead and jump on in for a second.
Hey, sorry.
That's okay.
What I have to say isn't near as important as what you were being told. I want to say thanks, welcome. I know some of you aren't first-time superintendents here, Mike Hart. I don't know. I got to assume you're only checking on Bryce Wilson because he lives in your district. So keep him straight. Hey, just to interrupt your morning a minute, thanks to you for taking the time to be here. I can't imagine, I was a superintendent for a lot of years. The competing interests that you have for your time right now, like maybe the start of school, amongst a whole lot of other things that are going on. And I appreciate what you do for the state. Really get to understand the budget, because there's rumor of a 10% cut out there in the state. Certainly won't impact schools. As a joke. So we all, the only good news about it is we have time to plan for it. So we'll also see if it comes to fruition. But I was in your spot a couple of years ago going through these same things, and the department at that point in time was unbelievably helpful to me. And Bryce Wilson and others are the next generation of that help. I think they're just as helpful as what I received back in the 90s. So I wish you well. Thanks for being here. Carry on.
You can jump on my slide. Just keep going. Okay, so again, back to certification is done on or before March 31st. We're collecting some data now. We'll be collecting more data as we come along. And we just start that process. The second time that we look at state aid is during the recalculation. So right now, actually, I'm beginning to do that prep for the recalculation of the 25-26 state aid. So those numbers and all those allowances and the formula students, all that stuff that we calculated, we're going to relook at that again, and we're going to do what we call a recalc. So at that point, we bring in any AFR amendments, we bring in fall membership or average daily membership, I'm sorry. And just really anything else that might have changed with that complex formulas that we've used. Recalc then, I think we'll talk about that at another slide here. So the important factors of TIOSA, the impacting factors. So that's that formula students. So that's the count of your students. And then we, of course, apply a formula to that. So very important that your student counts are correct. Previously, we just brought in qualified 4-year-olds. Now that's 4- and 5-year-olds that are brought in. And then any students contracted to another district. Then your general fund operating expenditures are brought in. That's your revenues and expenses from your AFR report. Then, of course, property values. So that's really important to the formula as well. All right, next. So to break it down, this is the state aid certification form that you all will be, this was what we post in March 1st. So this is posted on our website. It's district specific. So there's a copy for each district. And I want to just kind of break it down. The sheet is 2 pages, but I put it on 1 page here for presentation. So the top part is that formula students that I was mentioning. So there's the formulas built into there. So you'll see your fall membership. We have an ADM ratio. Our TOSA document will explain that more. And then bringing in then 4 and 5-year-olds to come up with your total formula students. So formula students is used in a lot of the calculations. So we know your population, and that's what some of the calculations are based on, is the amount of students or the formula students in your district. The next section is that formula needs. So again, those needs that are associated with educating the students in your district. So there's, almost 24 items in there that make up that total, that coming up with the needs of your district. Some as a district you may not use, some you might. So again, they're district specific and may change when you go to a new district. So make sure you're reviewing each one of those to make sure that you're taking I don't want to say advantage, but making sure that you're being given those allowable numbers to come up with the needs of your district. The next area is the formula resources. So that, again, that's the resources your district has to pay for the needs of those students. Yield from local effort, the net option funding, a very big one is that net option funding. If you're a net positive district, you're wanting to make sure those numbers are correct. To point out here is that foundation aid included in resources. So that changed in statute this year for 25-26, that now only 60%, 90%, no, geez, 60% of the $1,500 is being included in your resources. So that is a lower amount than you've seen in the past if you're comparing documents year to year. If you're a district that your needs outpace your resources, then you will become equalized, what we call equalized. So that means that you're going to receive additional funding to equalize your district. So again, if needs are higher than resources, you're going to receive that equalization aid. At the bottom of the document there was that calculation where I told you where we bring in the equalization aid, we bring in net option funding to come up with your final total of what your total state aid is. So above that total state aid line that I have circled is your recalc number. So when you're doing your budget, you want to make sure that you pick up that line that's bolded. That's very important. So you might have seen a previous number come out in some documents, the big documents that all the districts are involved are accounted for. But ultimately, you want to make sure that you get that total line there that's bolded as the one that you're going to enter into your budget and the one that you're doing your budget planning on. So again, this document's on our website. We do have 2 years there for you. So once we post the current year, you're able to, if something seems off or, oh my gosh, I lost $1 million in state aid, you're allowed, then my first thought would be, let's compare it. Let's see what changed. That'd be the easiest way to look at the documents and see what item on your and your totals might have changed. Then you can dive into that. If you can't find that on your own, of course, I'm a resource, and let's do it together and we can figure out what's going on and what might have changed in the makeup of your district. Okay, so category of needs. So we have that basic funding. That's the estimated amount required generally to operate a school district with that specified number of students. Again, calculation brings in those formula students. It's calculated by a comparison group. We have your allowances. So that's based on estimated or actual. They're district specific, and they address a specific specified situation by reducing your basic funding. Then we have the adjustments. So the adjustments could be your two-year new school, elementary and attendance site. So things like that that are specific to your school district. Then of course we have to do corrections. So those adjustments may be an estimation of numbers. So if you have student growth or things like that, that you're kind of planning in the future, well, once that future is passed, we go back and we look at those numbers, and then we do make sure that we've given you the proper allowance. And if there was overestimation or under, you might have a correction there, and that would show up for you. And that occurs 2 years later based on the timing of all that. So again, when you're making those estimations, you want to be doing your best guess so that you don't have any surprises down the road that might create a negative impact that would be hard to address if it was overestimated. And then stabilization. So it's an amount added or subtracted. It keeps the needs from growing or declining by more than a specific rate. So again, needs are your cost to educate your students. So that basic funding, that was the first box in the previous slide. So this is an estimated amount. We take a comparison group of 10 districts above yours, 10 below you. And then so it's measured by your formula students. And then it's averaged, the adjusted GFE is averaged when calculating basic funding. So it's a comparison group to kind of keep the littler districts, we wouldn't want to compare a littler district to one of the larger districts. So this is what this is doing. Okay, so back to allowances. So it recognizes funding for these items, your transportation allowance, data, elementary site, summer school, LEP, community achievement. So all these things, these allowances that gives you, recognizes that you need additional funding for these items. Again, district specific. Not every district might have a summer school, some districts don't have LEP or poverty. So we're giving you those, that credit for having those programs that are raising the cost of educating your students. So adjustments, I talked about those adjustments, again, these three here. So these are things that you will apply for, you'll send in your estimations, and it adds money to the formula. But again, we come back and we do that, we potentially look at those numbers again, and there could be a correction. Okay, another slide about the needs and corrections. So kind of just explaining that 2 years after the district receives the allowance, compares the estimated what actually occurred, and why it aligns the funding when the expenditure or the student growth is expected. And again, just kind of breaking down what poverty and LEP corrections might be. So it subtracts any excess allowance that was received, and then you might potentially be penalized if the plan requirements were not met. So if you estimated a certain amount and you didn't actually have those expenses, but you got the allowance, you might be penalized for not following that through. Okay, so again, resources. So components of resources. So again, the resources that come into your district to pay for those expenses, that's that property tax, your local effort rate, and it applies a tax rate to the valuations. The net option funding. So this one's a big one if you're a net positive district. And I always take a moment to talk about, I had a district that reached out to me, their state aid went down $2 million. 1 million we figured out and it was right, but almost $1 million was they didn't have 90 students accounted for in their system as net option in. So when their states, right now, they're $900,000 lower in their state aid because something in their system and their advisor wasn't entered correctly. And so that will catch up in the recalc. But again, they're having to deal with another $900,000 they didn't receive. And so that could be a major hit at that time. So again, validating the information you enter, making sure it's correct, and importantly, getting it in a timely manner. Allocate income tax, and we have the other actual receipts. So this is the fines and license fees, tuition, interest, money, special ed, state wards, motor vehicles. So these other actual receipts that come in. Community achievement, we call that CAP. And again, that's just for the learning community schools. And I don't think we probably have anybody in here. And then foundation aid, just reiterating that you're still getting that $1,500 just for a student, for forming a student. But right now only 60% of that is included in your resources. So it's showing that your resources are less. So if it could cause you, maybe some districts might have received equalization aid because of that. But again, you're still ultimately getting that $1,500 per formula student. Okay, so that was talking about the state aid in a whole as what your allowances and your resources and needs might be coming to your district. So again, we talked about that prior year correction and how that happens. So I'll be doing that this year now. But what that looks like on your current state aid form is last year we did, so in March of last year in 24, we certified your 24-25 state aid. Then in the fall of last year, I did the recalc. And so that recalc amount is then, so the 24-25 recalc is now what you see on your 25-26 cert document. So that's kind of how that plays out. So if there's a positive amount, because maybe some information wasn't submitted correctly, it's going to take you another year to get that back to you. So even like into the September. So keep that in mind when you're filling out those collections in the portal and making sure your assist system and your advisor is talking correctly together, because it can have an impact on the funding that comes to your district. So with the prior year correction, districts are allowed to request that information in advance of waiting for it to be paid out over the next state cycle. So right now, the email went out yesterday to the districts that were eligible to receive that lump sum if the amount of state aid correction, if there was a positive amount of $1,000, you can request that amount to come to your district on the first payment in September. So for those of you who are not quite sure, state aid is paid out in 10 payments starting in September. So the 25-26 state aid is not going to start being paid until September. So if you got that email yesterday, you're having some cash flow issues, reply to that email, stating that you would like that lump sum payment. Whatever amount you saw in that document is gonna be added to 1/10 of your September payment's 1/10 of the total state aid. So that lump sum would be added to that September payment. If you don't have cash flow problems, you don't want to reply the email, great. The lump sum will just be spread out with those 10 equal payments. You don't have to do anything. Again, I think I said this, but if it's under $1,000, we're just gonna add it to September just to get it taken care of. Any questions on the lump sum that you guys would have gotten yesterday? Okay. Again, just reiterating where you're seeing that prior and prior correction. Okay, so on the portal, we've got Naomi here is going to talk more about it, but I'm going to just kind of focus on areas of pertaining to state aid. So right now, so this is the front of the state of the legacy portal. When you go in there, we're going to talk about advisor. So this is clicking on that student staff button at the bottom, at the top, and then going into advisor. So the collections that I'm going to, or the information that I'm going to be looking at for state aid is information that's received from your student information system and as it talks to advisor. So if those are not communicating correctly, potentially, bottom line, you could lose funding. So that's how important that is, that you make sure that your systems in your school district are matching what advisor says that you can pull out of advisor. So you don't have to wait till the end of the year. You can do, I mean, I've told, once you get your year started, you're 1 month, 2 months into it, maybe start looking at those reports and make sure that all those students you had new applications for for your enrollment option, make sure that your registrar got those students coded correctly in your system, because currently net option funding is $11,580 per student. Wouldn't you like that to come into your district? So very important that you're getting all the information entered correctly into your system and it's talking correctly with advisor. So bottom there is the reports I use for TIOSA, your ADM, your fall membership, opt-in and out, contracted students, qualified early childhood, and then those students that qualify as LEP. So if you have any questions on those reports, I'm not an expert on advisor, but I can help you find some of those. And of course, then the service desk is a resource, always a resource for you on that. Currently, I've reached out to some of you on the fall membership. So have you gotten those emails? Again, you know your district well. I'm just looking at some variances. So as a whole, our team tries our best to review the data. And if we see variances, numerous collections, fall membership, census, you're building contents and values in the AFR. So if we see some variances, we do some comparisons and we try to reach out to you. But again, you know your district and our time is limited. We do the best we can to reach back out to you and to help save you. But sometimes we might miss something. So ultimately, you're responsible for getting that information entered correctly. Last year, I talked about a new TIOSA state aid collection. It didn't get released just of timing. So we're on target to put all these collections in one collection. So it'll be on one dashboard. If you're new, you don't even know what I'm talking about. But before, you had about 6 or 7 collections more than what you already have, that you had to go in individually and enter data, submit, improve, and all that. So we're going to put those under one umbrella. We're calling them TIOSA state aid collections. They're listed there for you. You can still have multiple people go in there. We don't expect that just one person does that, or even just you does that. So if you still had different people doing each one of these, they can still have access to go in there, enter the data, and then ultimately the superintendent, admin, whoever's the admin, will have to submit and approve that data. So ultimately, here's your opportunity to verify that that data is correct, which you should, because we're all, famous for fat fingering it. So make sure when you go in there and you submit and you're the final approver on any of these collections, and I think we're calling them apps now, make sure that you're approving that and reviewing that data and making sure it's correct. The PK instructional program hours, that's still going to be on its own and won't be in that TIOSA document or TIOSA state aid collection. Again, and all these are going to be due by October 15th. They'll open up probably about a month before that. So, and then we go in and we'll do some auditing and looking at some things and making sure the numbers look correct. So if you get an email from us that's saying, hey, we looked at this collection, please don't ignore it, because again, it could have a negative impact on your funding, and we're trying to give you an opportunity to correct that information. This is a snippet of what it looks like. It's not complete yet. But this is my most recent picture of as we were doing testing. So again, you can see the area and high school distance information. The data has been entered there and saved, so you get a check mark. So as a superintendent, if you go in there and you see one that's not checked, you might check and see, do we qualify for this? Hey, let me see, what's this all about? And maybe not this year, you're eligible for elementary site, but maybe you build one and then you're in your mind, you remember, oh my gosh, I can get an allowance for that. So just being aware of the items out there, the allowances that are available for you and that data that needs to be entered for that. Currently, this is in the legacy portal. Okay, I believe a week or so ago, we released the LEP and poverty requirement report. So this is alerting districts that in their 24-25 fiscal year, so the AFR data that you're preparing and you're gonna submit in October, these reports are alerting districts that submitted, that have an LEP or poverty expenditures, that this is the amount that you need to code in the AFR. If you don't code up to that 117%, again, looking at last year's or what you might have submitted in the collection as your estimates, this report is letting you know that now I've got to make sure I'm coding the correct amounts to those AFR account codes 1150 and 1160, or I might have a negative, or I might have a negative correction because I didn't reach that. And if it's below 50%, you may be disqualified from the entire allowance and it would be taken back from you. So with that said, so now one of the collections that's going to open is an LEP poverty expenditure estimate. So you'll be entering those numbers in, what you see in the future. There's a template there that allows you to enter the information or kind of giving you an idea what expenses are part of those programs to be able to come up with a good estimate that you can enter. I would say this is not one where you want to overestimate like we tell you with your SPED, but trying to get a really solid estimate of what you have. And of course, we expect it to grow each year. So those reports can be found on the links at the bottom there. If you have any questions, just reach out to me. We can talk that through. I've had people calling out and ask me, Michelle, what can I charge to poverty? I asked that question to Bryce when I started this position, and it was like, read the description in the user's manual. It really just kind of puts it right into perspective. So you've got to have the programming, you've got to have the students. So that description should help you kind of put in your mind, am I providing those services to those students that qualify for that? Not that they're sitting in a classroom and, with another classroom. It's kind of separate type of programming that you would have for those students. Okay, any questions so far? We're almost done with this. Okay, so common questions that we've had over the years that we kind of just keep showing again. So why does our school district receive very little state aid? So you may not receive very much state aid because you're not equalized. So that means that your resources are higher than what we've calculated your needs, and you're not receiving any equalization aid. So maybe you're only receiving that $1,500 per student, maybe some net option funding, but you're not seeing those big dollars. So not a bad thing. You're just a district that has the resources available to you and they're coming into you, whereas some of the other districts don't have that. And you're property rich. That's one there. The prime example, and a prime example of why your state aid might go down over the last few years is that your evaluations were going up. So that would cause your state aid calculation to go down because, or if you were receiving equalization aid because your resources were going up. Okay. I'm a non-equalized district. Does TOSA aid matter? Yes. Again, just what I said, you're getting that net option funding, allocated income tax, and foundation aids coming to you. So last year we had about 65 equalized districts. Now it's 50 again, because those valuations are going up and their districts are starting falling out of that being equalized. Does my general levy, we talked about levy with the budgets, does my general fund levy rate have any impact on TOSA? It does not. It's the valuations, not your levy. Can districts maximize their financial situation? This is what I've been talking about here, about making sure your data is correct. It comes in timely. Coding in the AFR is a big one. So making sure you're coding to the proper program codes, making sure that you're coding initially when your AFR is submitted and you're not having an amendment later to back that. So again, if you amend, maybe it's going to cause a recalc to happen and it would have a negative impact on some of your funding. And then look at the whole picture when determining where to code expenses. And if you have questions, call any of us. We are it's taken a while, but we're becoming experts on the new code structure, but we can help you navigate through that. Okay, a big one that's required by statute is your superintendency transparency, is a Superintendent Transparency Act. So this is required, this is in statute. So as new superintendents, or if you had a new contract that was signed as of July 1st, you have to upload that contract into the portal. Currently, that collection is in the legacy portal, and the CDC has to be uploaded before August 1st. It's the entire contract, not anything else. So there has to be the full contract loaded, and then if you have an addendum throughout the year, then you're required to upload that addendum as well. Make sure you're not overwriting the contract. If it's just an addendum or an amendment, make sure, because will be check marks where you do that. Then with your budget document, when you submit in the LC2, there's a Schedule D there. This is just limited information, mostly just financial data where you just enter in the box, and that also has to be completed. If that's not completed, we'll be sending your budget back and requiring you to enter that, as well as the auditors if we miss it. Then ultimately by October 1st, if the data is not received, you could potentially have some withholding from local funds. I've been here 6 years. We've never withheld funds from anyone. So again, we're helping you out. We're reaching out to you and contacting you, making sure you get that information submitted. And that's all I have. Any questions for State Aid 101? All right, so we got the federal programs coming up.
And the card is very short, so. Right. I'm Beth Wooster. We talked about this earlier. I'm the administrator, and then Dottie and Ann are both here. So we will be here to help you as we have some time later on. Just want to talk a little bit about the ESSA Consolidated Grant. The different programs that are within the ESSA Consolidated Grant, and you know about the whole $6.8 million being frozen with Trump. We do have Title I allocations, we have Title I-D allocations. So those are the two we have so far. The rest we're still waiting on, and we're still hopeful they're gonna come through. So at this point, they aren't in the grant. Once we get those funds, we will work our allocations and then get them in, and we will let you know as soon as we hear anything. On the ESSA Consolidated, it's Title I-A, Title I-D, Title II-A, Title III-EL, Title III-IE, and Title IV. So everyone gets Title I, Title II, and Title IV. The Title III is dependent on how many students are identified as English learners in your district. We also have some other grants that fall through our team. The CSI grant, which is for those schools that are identified as CSI or additional ETSI, CSI, the CSIs basically. The RLIS grant, which is for the rural small schools under 600 students. And the SRSA is just for 3 districts in the state. So that doesn't affect many of you. There's also the Title I-C grant that is the migrant grant, that there's different programs throughout the state. So there's only, I think, one, Lexington is the only one that has its, and Omaha has a self-standing migrant grant. But those are also funds we're waiting on. Then we have the 2 competitive grants, the McKinney-Vento grant, which Ann oversees, and then the Stronger Connections grant. So. Title I allocations. Okay, so just when you see allocations, they seem like they've gone down, they have. In 24-25, we had 90,000, Nebraska had 90,471. Or million. 90,471,477. This year, our allocation is only 78,000. 4 million, gosh, 78,493,470. So almost a $12 million cut. So when you see those differences, that's why. It all has to do with census and the growth from other states compared to ours. So this year, we've had an increase each year. This year, it's a big decrease. So not a good year for that to happen, but just so you know, that's what that is. And then within the Title I allocation, that also the school improvement funds are pulled out of there, and the Title I-D neglected delinquent. And there's only 4 districts that get those. So it's all split. So once we get the funds from the Department of Ed, Janice on our team works her magic to do all of the calculations, and those are posted on our website at this point. They aren't loaded in GMS yet. I just sent a correction email this morning. Because if you go in, you can't complete the goals and needs page because they haven't shown up in the allocations page yet. So, we've already approved everything. It's in the, budget and grant management's hands right now to do their approval. And we're hoping to get them loaded within the next day or two, for sure by Wednesday. So at admin days, we will have a workroom that will have actually money in there that we can help you with budgeting if you have questions there.
Should we reduce in our budget the title funding by 13% or by that same amount? That your total state aid is, or total federal aid is
Well,
dropping?
it's gonna be whatever your allocation is, it'll show you exactly what your district will get. And so, yeah, some districts got more, some got less. It just all has to do with census, so.
And we have those numbers for you today, if you want to know what your Title I allocations are, if you are a district who only takes Title I. We have those numbers for you today. It's just not loaded into GMS yet. So if you want to know what your district will get, touch base with one of us and we will let you know.
It's also hyperlinked in the email that I sent yesterday. If you just click on our website, it'll take you down to the bottom. It'll have allocations and you'll see all of the district allocations there. So those are there. The ones that are being held are Title I-C, Title II-A, Title III, Title IV-A, and Title IV-B. So Title I-C is the migrant funds. Title II is the professional development. Title III is the English language acquisition. Title IV is Title IV-A, safe and healthy wellness. Yeah, well-rounded. That's in technology. And then the Title IV-B is the 21st century. OMB is holding those funds right now. It wasn't the Department of Ed, even though the letter came from the Department of Ed. It's OMB. They found some misspending in a couple of states, so they're holding everyone's funds hostage. So I was in DC last week and met with the Department of Ed, met with all of the different offices. We even met with OMB and explained the importance of getting those funds out. We also met with delegation, met with all 5 our representative senators, and they are all in support of getting those funds into your hands. So we talked about the importance of them. I know that several, when we talked to them on Friday, had already reached out to OMB. And then we know that Senator Fisher's office and Bacon's office also, Representative Bacon have also reached out, pushing again. So I know we're trying to get support. Nebraska is on top of it on trying to push the importance of getting those funds. So we're hopeful. There was a lot of noise last week about 21st century possibly coming through. On Friday, when we met with them, or we talked to them, they hadn't heard a word yet. And they said, once those are released, it's gonna take 2 to 3 days for them to do their calculations. So, and then I met Saturday with the representative from Ed for Nebraska, and she's like, nothing still. So at the earliest, if they were to release them, and there would be noise if it was released from OMB, it'll be 3 days after they release those funds that the state would even get our funds, then we have to do calculations. So I know it's a waiting game and I'm sorry, but all I can say is don't give up. We're still hopeful that those will come through.
When is the ESSA grant due?
The ESSA grant is not due till September 30th, and it may be pushed back. That's our point at this, assuming we're gonna get those funds. And I know that with only Title I in there, it's not even there yet. We have to do some discussions if we're gonna go ahead and let you submit with just the Title I funds and then do amendments when the other funds come in. I'm guessing that's what we'll have to do, so at least you can get going on those funds. So Nebraska's impact by those funds being held is about 40 million. So that's a lot of money. And then also wanted to make sure you knew on Title I and Title II, if we got the funds, they only give us a portion of the funds. So if your grant is approved before October 1st, the GAN will only show a portion, and then we would redo your GAN once we get the full money. They've always done this. we very rarely have the grants approved by October first, so it hasn't affected those grants, but if for some reason, I just want you to be aware of that. Okay, and I'm gonna turn it over to Ann.
Okay, so has anyone actually gotten into GMS and created your grant? Maybe a couple of you, okay. You might have seen on there that the due date was July 1st, and you might have panicked a little bit and called our office and thought, oh no, you might have lost all your Title I funds. We had to do that just because we don't want you guys to be able to submit the grant yet, because the allocations aren't in. So don't fret when you go to the GMS page and create the ESSA grant. It's not due till the end of September, and even with that date, it would likely change based on when we get Title II, Title III, Title IV amounts. Like Beth said, they are not reflecting in GMS right now, but you can create your grant. The three of us are here to help you today if you would like to do that. If you're sitting there and as Beth is talking about Title II, Title III, Title IV, and you're thinking, what in the world is Title III, Title II, and Title IV? We have some great sessions at admin days that you can come and we will go over all those areas of what the different programs are, how you can use them, and what your district has used in the past. So we are told that the allocations will be in GMS by admin days, which is Tuesday. So if you do not want to create your grant today and you want to do it once the allocations are in there, no problem. We will be at admin days as well to help you get through the grant. What you can do now is you can create the grant today, so we can at least kind of show you that part in GMS. You can complete the good old GEPA. Everyone loves completing the GEPA tab. And then you complete all of the Title I section except for just 2 little pages. So, and a lot of it is narratives. So a lot of it is kind of stuff that you or your predecessor filled out last year. And again, we can't submit the grant yet. With all the doom and gloom and the big budget cuts, we are encouraging you to maybe think about a few things to consider for your district, depending on your size. And if you take Title I, or if you move all your funds to Title I, are you gonna have any carryover from last year? Especially in maybe Title II or Title IV. If you have carryover from last year and maybe you're not gonna get as much this year, how can you arrange that to help balance your budget? If your Title I amount goes down, what is that gonna look like for your district? Are you not gonna be able to fund as many title teachers? Are you going to need to drop your title teacher down to part-time title and pick up the rest of her salary with the district fund? That is some things to consider. If nobody receives the Title II, III, and IV, what's that gonna look like? If you are a smaller district, there's a good chance that you move your Title IV funds into Title I, and that's usually about $10,000 if you are, well, it is $10,000 if you're a smaller district. What you would be out that $10,000. How is that gonna impact your budget moving forward? And then also if you have any non-publics in your district, remember the non-publics, they do get the Title II and Title IV and maybe Title I if they want that. We have a list for non-publics for all of the districts. So if you're unsure of whether or not your district, a non-public within your district wanted to take title funds, we have that information for you. Also, if your funds go down, remember that the non-public funds would also go down, and then that would fall to you to be able to relay that to your non-public, that the funds are going down so that they can appropriately plan. Especially if they take for Title II, does a lot of stuff with professional development. If the non-public was really relying on that money for professional development and they don't have as much, or maybe they're not going to get it at all, that needs to be communicated to the non-public so they can plan accordingly. The next step is that our team also does programmatic monitoring. So we don't do the fiscal part, we do the program part. In the past, 1 or 2 of us from our team would come out to the districts and we would sit down with you and your team and we go through the whole monitoring process for Title I and everything that falls under ESSA. Due to budget cuts on our end, we are not going to be able to be coming to districts as much. So you will be doing a desk audit or a Zoom for your monitoring unless you hear otherwise. So remember that the monitoring schedule has moved to a 5-year schedule. It should be in year 2 of your continuous improvement plan is when we will be coming. And so if you're in year 2, I know we have quite a few people on our list. 8. We have 8 people on our list who are in this room that get monitored this year. So if you are one of those people, Dottie, Beth, or I would love to just chat with you quick, just so you know that that would be coming down the road. We don't really usually start with that process until the late fall, early winter, so around November, December. We are here to support you guys, and we want to make sure that you understand your grant fully and that you can complete it without many headaches or any headaches. And so here's some additional support that we will be offering over the next couple weeks or next couple months. That NDE Day, look for anything from the federal programs team having to do with ESSA, ESEA, Title I. We have quite a few sessions that our team will be presenting on. And then we also have office hours. So if today in the morning, you really just want to focus on your budget, you want to work with Bryce and his team and just get that off your to-do list, will not hurt our feelings. We are going to have 4 office hours Zooms that you can attend, and we will go through step by step each section of the ESSA grant and the Title I and all that. And then we will have breakout rooms to offer one-on-one help. Okay, so if you are a little overwhelmed today by all the previous information, don't worry, you can put this off for a little bit and complete your ESSA grant later when we have office hours and things might be a little calmer. Always look out or make sure you read emails coming from Beth Wooster, since she is our administrator. She sends out all the big important information. So if you ever get an email from Beth Wooster, please read it. This is the GMS landing page. If you are familiar at all with GMS, this is where you will see your grant. We just wanted to point out at the very bottom, if you can kind of see it down there, there's a purple circle. If you click on that, that will take you to the contact page, and you can find the information for anyone on our federal programs team, or really anyone at NDE if you need help. So that contact us tab will take you there, but this is just our team. Beth is our administrator, Dottie's the Title I director. And then we're a team of 10, strong team of 10. And then that's just all of our contact information if you need it.
And I want to just interrupt with a couple of things. If you're a new superintendent and you haven't filled out the unified grade profile, be sure to do that. That's where we pull everybody's email address from that Beth sends notifications to. So we can help you with that today if you need it. And then the other thing is, make sure you spend all your money from last year. When you go to do a final reimbursement at the end of the year, September-ish probably, don't release any money to NDE. It doesn't come back so we can go on vacation. It doesn't come back to us. It goes back to the federal government. We want you to spend every dime. So talk to us as you're doing your final reimbursement if you didn't spend all the funds. Let us help you to figure out how to carry those over or how to get them spent in your books.
So I was gonna say, I know there are 2 new superintendents that have not done the UGP, because when I was trying to find everyone's email addresses yesterday, there were 2 that I didn't know Dottie had the magic list from everyone that was attending. I went through and found every single one manually yesterday, so I know there were 2 missing. So if you haven't gone in there and done that, you need to make sure it'll show the old superintendent's contact information, and we want to make sure that we have the most current information.
On that really quick, do we amend it? Do we just go in and open it? Okay.
Yep, you amend it, and when you submit it, it doesn't have to get approved, it automatically is approved, but that's how you change any contacts. If there's anyone that we need to contact or any of the other offices at NDE that about grants, that's where they'll go to look.
Thank you.
In the collections under advisor, where you have all your codes and all of that, if I want to get the former superintendent's name out of there and put mine in, who do I talk to about that?
That's a Naomi, right, Naomi?
I heard it and I was like, oh, we're gonna talk later.
Thank you.
Hey, I would put in one more plug too, guys. I had one of the superintendents say to me, when he first came in this morning, is the CTE but going to be here today? And I said, no, but I connected with somebody upstairs. So if there's somebody else at NDE, another team that you need to talk to today, reach out to us and we'll see if they can come down and help you this afternoon if you need support in another area. Happy to help.
Any other questions?
All right.
All right, you're getting there. Gonna go through a couple more things, and Naomi's gonna come up here too, before I actually wrap things up. But one of the big important things, and I'll hit on this at Administrator Days next week too, this is gonna be a big deal, I think. and it's really just kind of come to light over the last month or so, but it's the school tax credit, and the changes that were made by the special session last August. So as a new superintendent or business manager, I know you're still trying to get your hands around all this, but you're gonna need to be able to understand this and explain this to your board, and your public, possibly your state senator or others, because I think politically this might become a hot topic if it's not understood well in the legislature. So with all the focus and attention on school districts and their aid and property taxes and spending, this is gonna look a little misleading. So what happened, and I'm gonna give an example. I think the best way to walk through this is with an example. But essentially what's gonna be the issue is because of a timing issue and a change, you're gonna probably have you're gonna have higher revenues during the 24-25 fiscal year and higher cash balances at the end of August than you typically would have. It's a 1-year issue. So the situation is an example I've created, and quite honestly, I put this slide together with the idea that you might want to steal this, and you can send me the copyright cash later. But steal this and use this with your board or public or anybody else you're explaining it to. So it'll be on my admin day slides as well next week. But the example is, if I'm I'm a farmer in your district and I'm paying $100,000, typically I would have $100,000 tax bill to pay to the school district. I would pay that in April and August, right? But your August payment as a school district, you're not gonna receive until September, maybe October from the county, right? So that's gonna show up as a next year receipt. So in this example, I would write 2 checks. I'd write my $50,000 check in April and I'd write a $50,000 check in August, which shows up as revenue to you in 25-26 typically. With the change that the legislature made in September though, instead of getting that tax credit, I used to put that 100,000 on my income tax statement and I'd get a credit on my income taxes. They changed that and they changed it to, so it's like a property tax credit now where I don't even pay it up front. The state pays it on my behalf, right? It's not the property tax credit, it's a school tax credit. It's gonna show up separate, should show up separate coming from your county as another line. You'll code it the same, you're still gonna code it to the same, we're gonna combine it with the property tax credit account code. But the situation is it's a timing issue for this first year. So under this new system, now the state's paying 40,000 of my $100,000 bill. I only have to pay 60,000. So I'm writing my same $30,000 check in April. I'm gonna write a $30,000 check in August that you're gonna receive in September next fiscal year, right? So that's the same, that 30,000 is the same. The difference is the state is paying that other 40,000. They're gonna write and send you a check or send it to the counties that's gonna get passed on to you on or before January 31st for the first one and on or before April 30th for the second one. Okay, so what does that mean? That 20,000, the second payment, they made a 20,000 payment in January and a 20,000 payment in April. That second 20,000 came in the 24-25 year, which would have come in the 25-26 year for you. Okay, so that's the difference. It's the timing difference of that essentially the second payment the state made of the school tax credit is what you received early. So the situation now is we've got a whole bunch of phone calls from school districts saying, our cash balances are way high. We got way more, they're calling it property tax credit. It's really school tax credit. So understand that difference. But what's going on then? Yeah, your cash balances are higher. Your revenue is going to show higher for this year. So you got to explain that to the public. Be ready to do that. But the third thing you got to understand is come September, October, your cash draws from the county are going to be less by that 20,000. So it's gonna all even out, but it's gonna even out in the next fiscal year. So you have to be, if you get yourself in a situation like, hey, board says, we got a ton of cash, we have a high cash balance, we had a great year. Let's cut our tax asking. And then next September, October rolls around and all of a sudden you're pulling down, you might be in trouble. Now, I'm not saying you may be in a situation where you do need to reduce your tax asking because of other circumstances, but you need to understand this circumstance. So what you're really looking at is that second school tax credit payment that came from the county through the state, to understand that your September draw is going to be that much lower. So in this example, when you're planning, you need to know that 20,000, obviously multiplied by a lot higher amount for your district, but in this example, 20,000 is not gonna show up in September, which has been the past. So that's gotta be part of your budget planning. It'll even out after this year because September, October will be lower. And then everything else will kind of smooth going forward. But so it's a one year timing issue with the change this year. Questions on that?
So that money comes as like basically a forward for what you would get the next year. Kind of.
I'm gonna say, well, it is kind of forward this one time as a timing. It's not really, I mean, it's your tax
Next-
ask from last fall.
Yeah. So then next year we'll have the same thing. Is that correct?
Next year, it won't be an issue though, because September and October are already gonna reflect the lower
Mhm.
draws that you're not getting from property taxpayers because you've already got it from the state.
Got it.
But yes, the situation or the,
So would we still get those payments then? At that school tax credit, would that come in next year?
yes, that's an
In the
ongoing
same-
thing
In the
right
same
now.
2 months, so we're gonna see those
Yep.
influxes during those months every year.
Correct.
Got it.
Yep.
So we're kind of getting paid sort of ahead now.
You're getting paid sooner than you did under the old method.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Cash flow is quicker
Mhm.
for the portion the state's picking up. The other thing that's nice is the state pays 100% of your request. You know, your property taxpayers don't, or it might be a late payment, but you know that the portion come from the state is gonna be on time, at least until our state's budget completely falls apart.
So you're really saying by next April, it'll all be balanced out, smoothed over?
It should, like, your total revenue for the 25-26 year will look more normal. Because the timing issue is just this one year. But because September and October will be lower to account for the issue this year, to make up for the higher revenues that occurred during the 24-25 fiscal year.
Do you have a crystal ball?
It gets pretty dirty.
Yeah, so if you look ahead, you know, that 90 million dollar shortfall, is this property tax credit, school tax credit, is that the first thing to get cut?
No, well, it's a real good question. So typically when the state gets in a real bad situation, so I've been doing this for 16 years now. Typically where they went was after TIOSA. I mean, if it was bad enough, that's the biggest line item in the budget. So it's pretty hard to not take some out of the TIOSA. They've stayed away from that a little bit in the past. Politically, going after property tax credit or school tax credit is a pretty ugly one for them. That's a hard one for them. And I think they've kind of did it so that it is hard to touch politically. Will they maybe have to go there? I think it's pretty clear we have a major situation. They've talked for 2 years since the Education Future Fund was established. Was that really sustainable? We've been robbing every fund in the state to try and keep that fund up, and it's not keeping up. And now we have another situation on top of that, and the governor's talking about 10% cuts across the state's budget. So it looks to be pretty interesting. I don't know. I think, I honestly, and this is just my opinion, not a department position or anything else like that. I think a portion of this was anticipated, because the only way that they can raise other revenues is if we get the state in a situation where they have to raise some other revenue and they don't want to go to property taxes. Because they've tried 2 times to go after sales or income tax, really sales tax increases, and haven't been able to get it done. If we get to a situation where something has to be done, then they might get the votes that they need. That's just my own little guess at the game going on. I'm probably wrong. So, other
Sometimes-
questions? Yeah.
Sometimes in the past, when they would reduce TIOSA, they would allow you a little more on the local end. And then you'd have to just fight it out with your own district residents, but I don't know if they're wanting to do that anymore.
Well, and they did, you're right. That was a strategy that's been done, but the thing about that is most districts aren't up against the $1.05. So that's not as much of an issue. And the way the property tax authority works, so here's the other piece to this. If they reduce TIOSA now, it's just clear as day, whatever they reduce that amount by, because we'll put a model out of property tax authority when we first get all the information. And if they reduce TIOSA, you'll be able, every single district will be able to go say, hey, this is the amount the state is pushing to property taxes, because when TIOSA goes down, property tax authority goes up. So they kind of create a situation where they're showing everybody across the state, here's how much we pushed out on property taxpayers by reducing state aid. That didn't used to exist. That was kind of a downside to them on the property tax authority piece. It makes it real easy for a superintendent to say, you know what, our property tax authority was this, then when you reduced our state aid, now it jumped up to this, and that 500,000 is because the state reduced. Yeah. So. Any other questions on that? Audit requirement, hopefully you have an auditor lined up. We know that's becoming more and more of an issue. I would just note here, one of the things the school auditors are really pushing is trying to change a school fiscal year. I've been talking to quite a few people out there, school districts, others. This is an idea that I think maybe has a chance. Lining it up. Right now, schools deal with 3 fiscal years. You deal with your fiscal year, which is September 1, August 31st. You got the federal fiscal year, October 1 to September 30th, and the state fiscal year, July 1 to June 30th. Lining up the state and the school fiscal year maybe makes some sense. So that's something that I think could help. We would leave our AFR and audit due dates the same as November 1, November 5th, giving the auditors more time to get those school district audits done, which is really becoming an issue for some schools to find an auditor. That's a big crunch for them in that time period. So just for kicks and giggles, anybody know, we did some research and found out why school districts did have a July 1 to June 30 fiscal year. So things run in cycles. Does anybody know why that fiscal year was changed? Anybody have a guess?
Nice weather.
You're on the right track. There it is.
Golf.
The school district auditors wanted it changed because they didn't want to interrupt their golf time during the summer. So now they want to change it back to July 1 to June 30th because I guess, the good old boys summer golf league isn't as important as it used to be. I don't know. So that's just kind of an interesting fact, I guess.
So if you see a change, it'll go back to July 1.
I think so. It'd be a July 1, June 30th. One of the big things with that is then you're operating 4 months essentially without a budget, or let's see, July, August, September, 3 months without a budget. The other political subdivisions are doing it and it doesn't seem to be a big issue. So it pushes that back a little bit, but.
Something happens in legislation. Is that how that works?
It would have to be, yes, it would have to have statute change, so legislature would have to do that. Correct. So if you have thoughts, ideas on that, concerns that I should know about, let me know. The other thing on the audit requirements, I guess the big thing here is you need to be aware if your district doesn't have somebody that's capable of overseeing the financial statement preparation process, you have to have a separate audit firm do your audit that does your financial statements. We have some situations, some districts probably don't have an expert in financial. You don't have to be an expert, I shouldn't say. You don't have to be able to put them together, but you have to be able to look at a financial statement and know that doesn't look right to me. Something's not exactly right there. If you have a basic understanding, you're probably okay. If you really don't have somebody on your staff that is comfortable with all of that financial statements, then you need to be talking to your auditing firm about, hey, maybe we have a conflict of interest situation going on here. You hit that one already, Michelle. Just a reminder, if you can't find really good bus drivers like these guys, you do have the option for school districts to pay mileage reimbursement instead of providing transportation. So just the quick overview is if a student lives more than 4 miles from the school building they attend, you have to either provide transportation or pay mileage reimbursement so if they live 10 miles away, it's up to 3 miles, the calculation is. So 4 miles to qualify, the calculation's done at 3 miles. So if they live 10 miles away, you would give them 7 miles of mileage reimbursement at the one one-way per day rate of $1.995 per mile. If they're enrollment option students and they qualify for free lunch, you either have to provide transportation or mileage reimbursement for them as well. All right, Naomi, I'll let you do this and I'll wrap up with just a couple slides at the very end.
I will try to make it super short since we're all ready for lunch. Biggest takeaway is our email address, nde.servicedesk. And I really appreciate your patience because we are stressed right now and we've got a lot of transitions happening. So thank you if you're a new superintendent for your patience while we got all the transitions taken care of. We're still working on some of you. So that's my priority today. Anybody who has an open ticket, hasn't started their transition, you're in the middle of a ticket with us, come find me. I want to make sure you get set up before you leave today. That's my goal. But again, the only takeaway really is our email address because that starts a ticket and then we can get you in our queue and get you assisted. So, and Bryce said I only had a few minutes, so I'm gonna go really fast. But basically, I'm gonna skip some of this. The biggest things happening right now are we have legacy portal and we have new portal. And the challenge points are knowing which one do you go to now. The majority of the data you're submitting is still in legacy. We have a few new applications in new portal. And on this portal splash page, at the bottom, there is this little hyperlink. Which portal do I use? That's a Google sheet that we are updating consistently as we move things from legacy to new. So if you're not quite sure which one to go to, click that. We are going to try and send a bulletin for every application that we move over into the new portal. You heard, I think it was Michelle said, Naomi's calling them applications now. If I say collection, legacy. If I say application, new portal. So that's another way to kind of reframe your brain on where to go. What else? TIOSA is probably going to be a new.
Oh, you think so?
I think so. Our goal is really to get things in new. Here's why. No more activation codes. You don't have to look something up. If you are the district administrator, you will have the access. ESSA ineffective teachers for superintendents, it opens on Monday. You don't have to ask for it. You just log into the new portal, you'll see it, you complete it, you move on with your life. It's just so much slicker. So what else should I touch through here? I'm not gonna mess on any of that. So in legacy, there's student and staff data. And I think you guys talked about advisor validation. I just want to make a point. We have a fall collection period for that membership count date, October 1st. And so your data stewards are actively working to get that student data into advisor validation. That's when we pull a lot of the state aid data. So it's really important for you to look at that information in October. The deadline is October 15th. The audit window is through the 31st. So that's aligns with what she was talking about. New portal, the biggest issues we've seen so far are potentially SSO login issues. So if you're getting a weird blank screen or a weird error, let me know that.
Real quick,
Yeah.
we have a question about the superintendent transparency. Collection. Yesterday, we decided it's just gonna stay where it's at.
It's gonna stay where it's at through this collection period.
CDC.
Yes, so it's gonna stay in CDC through that August due date. And then maybe a couple months after that is when we'll put it into the new portal. But we want to get you through that statutory date.
Yep.
Not mess with something that's working. Good?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see what else. If you have staff who work with person IDs, student IDs, they're going to be desperate for access to that application in the new portal. Let me know if you need help on where to assign or approve their access. My suggestion is in the new portal, when you're assigning or approving access, try to do it by a multi-application role instead of a single application role. So everything's defined by a role in the new portal, and each application has its own role. But there's also roles like business manager, data steward, SPED director. Try and find a role that's applicable to what they're doing because it contains a bunch of applications versus having to do it onesie twosie all the time. So that would be a suggestion. This is your homepage on the new portal. Let's see, I'm flying through this because you'll be able to take this away. Come visit us at an ESU new portal roadshow. We'll also be at admin days. We'll have a table there. And that's it. So takeaway, email address. I wanted to get you to lunch. There you go. Okay. I'm here all day, so come find me.
All right, I promise, you're close. Grants management system, just want to make sure that you're comfortable if you're new, that you're getting in there and finding the information you need. Information on where, how to do that is on that slide. The contact, so if you are not sure what to do for one of the different grants that's flowing through, the grant for the title stuff, obviously Beth and her team over here are gonna be your contacts for the title grants, IDEA. Susie Pierce is listed up there. Megan Cassing's also another good resource for IDEA. Just with the system itself, the grant reimbursement tickets, we have the grant reimbursement email address there and activation codes for those, the GMS data information. On the state payments, I want to real quick a note on this, that when you get a payment from the Department of Education, that shows up on our audit confirmation website. Okay, so it'll say this is for state aid or special education reimbursement or this federal grant. You'll get that information. If you get a payment from the state and it doesn't show up on our notification system or our audit confirmation system, payment system, you're getting a payment from another state agency. Could be DHHS, environmental quality. There's several that send out funds to school districts as well. If you don't get an email, so our accounting system will send an email out to your district when you get a payment from us. We found that there's a lot of districts that aren't getting that email because it allows for one email address in the system. If your person left and nobody else had their email switched, then you're not getting the breakout of that. That would tell you, hey, this came from Department of Education, this came from DHHS, whatever it is, you'll get that information. So on the slide, Liz Hernandez, you send her an email and say, hey, we're not receiving the state accounting system Enterprise One email breakout. Send her and she'll get your information or whoever it is at your school district's information in the system so that somebody's getting that email with that information. Otherwise, all the NDE payments should show up in the payment confirmation system. Just a list of websites. Really highly recommend the Finance and Organizational Services website that you bookmark that. It's gonna have all the information on AFRs, budgets, state aid, transportation. It's everything is out there under that Finance and Organizational Services website. Even the exempt school type information will be out there for you there. One thing too, I noticed in the chat, I jumped off for a second. There was a question, if you provide a pickup point, we talked about mileage reimbursement. Okay, you answered it, but I think it's good for this group too. So if you provide a pickup point, you have somebody that lives 10 miles away and you have a pickup point at say mile 5, you would only have to pay them mileage for the 5 miles. You don't pay them all the way the 7 miles if they live 10 miles out. Okay.
So this was Molly. We have a cornfield school, so we have pickup points in our 3 towns. And so is there mileage from that point or is it from the school?
I missed the question. Say the question one more time, Molly.
So since we have our 3 towns that we come to our cornfield school and we pick up there, are we paying mileage if they meet that pickup point? Is their mileage figured from the school or from that point?
Their mileage would be figured, but whether they qualify or not would be from the point, pickup point.
It's from home to school and then they can deduct from that point. So if they're 10 miles from the school and the pickup point is at mile 5, then they would deduct that and then the last couple of miles.
Okay.
So they're paying 2 miles then, or they're paying 5 miles? 2 miles, yep, okay. So you're paying 2 miles, so it's still 3 miles is on the parent. Either way, you're just providing the pickup point halfway there, and so you're paying 2 mileage.
Okay,
Plus
thank you.
transportation. All right, I guess really as we're winding this down, you're starting you're doing your first budget, know that we're here to support you. I guess we've said that over and over, but a lot of different ways. One of the things today, how this oftentimes goes for some of the newbies, especially if you haven't had a lot of help getting started in it. We'll sit with you this afternoon, get you started, give you a homework assignment, say, hey, here's what you need to do first. Come back then and see us. We'll be out at administrator days, Platinum 4, I think, room, both the Wednesday and the Thursday from 8 till about 3, 4 o'clock, somewhere in there. Up doing budget assistance. So stop by. That's just a first come, first serve. We'll have you write your name down on the paper sign-in sheet when you come in, and we'll just try and help you as quickly as we can. Wednesday, the last couple of years has got a little crazy, so you might be patient with us. We'll bounce table to table to table, just trying to help everybody we can as fast and quickly as we can. But just know that that's kind of how that'll work at administrator days. Again, come up. It's a great chance for us to try and get you going, moving down the road and more comfortable. This afternoon, again, we'll be here helping. Again, you don't have to stick around this afternoon, but if you want to, we're more than glad to help out. The big thing too is just remember, like, even if you're an experienced superintendent, I'll tell you, I don't know how many budgets I look at a year. It's a lot. And I would say maybe 1, 2 at the most do I ever look at and not find something that doesn't need to be corrected. It's just really good to have a second set of eyes, even as an experienced superintendent. Just take a peek at it and make sure that you got everything, in the place that it needs to be. All the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and you're good to go. So I've always recommended that. You can get a hold of us for budget assistance outside of those things a lot of different ways. All of us that do that, we'll meet with you in person here at the office. We'll Zoom with you. I like just email the budget to me. Give me a chance to go through it, when I'm not in a meeting, and I'll send an email back and say, hey, here's the stuff that you need to address. You can look through it and say, okay, this one doesn't make sense to me. I know what he said. I know what he means here. Do those ones and I'll give him a call. We can line that up. So that works really well in my opinion. But however it works best for you, we're here to support you on that. Make sure you get through your budget. Contact information for our school finance teams there. We made it. I guess it was a long morning. I know a lot of information. Know that the biggest thing is don't struggle in this stuff. Contact us, reach out, know where those documents are that we talked about that are good resources for you. But more than anything, know that we are glad to be helpful to you. So with that, is there any questions before? We got a couple, did you pass out the evaluation sheets? Okay, we're gonna pass out evaluation sheets. If you just leave those back on the back table back there in a pile upside down, that's fine. Otherwise, any questions before we break for lunch? Again, we'll be back here. We'll do a quick lunch break. Feel free to go grab something, come back, or if you've had enough and you're ready to leave, that's fine too. But any questions? All right, thank you for coming.
All right, well, let's take a look. I'm trying to activate some today.
I brought my
Probably
light,
are
so,
both very good.
yeah. so just had one.
Here,
Here's one. Yeah.
It might be
Yes,
upside
here
down.
it is.
Oh.
So I am sure.
I haven't taken